Chapter 3050. Fleeing in defeat, Juan ignored the cries of the foreign races and slowly walked toward the Phoenix People Saintus. The killing intent in his eyes was so strong that it seemed to materialize. When some of the foreign races experts were about to make a move, the human experts immediately released their auras to suppress the foreign races experts. The foreign race experts didn't dare to act rashly. They knew very well that if they were to attack this human, the human experts wouldn't let this matter rest. At that time, another huge battle would ensue. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to do anything to this red-lipped, white-toothed human. Therefore, the foreign race experts all looked toward the Phoenix People Saintus. Their eyes were filled with hope, hoping that the Saintus would attack and destroy this arrogant human. Since this human doesn't know what's good for him, then the Saintus should attack and destroy this ant. Save him the trouble of shouting in front of us. Just looking at him is annoying. Haha, this person is courting death. He doesn't even know how strong the Saintus is. That's the 99 Phoenix body. It's a powerful constitution rarely seen in the Phoenix people for countless years. It far surpasses the majority of the Phoenix people's bloodline. The foreign race experts looked coldly at Juan, who was slowly walking toward them. In their hearts, they all thought that this person was courting death. With the strength of the Phoenix People Saintus, she would be able to destroy this arrogant human in just a few moves. On the human side, many experts frowned. They felt that this guy who had suddenly appeared was a bit too arrogant. He actually wanted to challenge the Phoenix People Saintus. In the Scarlet Mountain Villa team, Yi Chidong was accompanied by a skinny middle-aged man. This middle-aged man's aura was very powerful. He should be a powerful creation realm expert. At this moment, the middle-aged man couldn't help but shake his head. This person is too arrogant. He actually wants to challenge the Phoenix People Saintus. He probably doesn't know how terrifying the Saintus is. The ignorant are truly fearless. Yi Chidong, who was standing beside the middle-aged man, looked at Juan's back with a complicated expression. When he heard the middle-aged man's evaluation of Juan, he subconsciously said, "This person might be a match for the Phoenix People Saintus." The middle-aged man looked at Yi Chidong with a strange gaze and said, "Chidong, are you all right? Weren't you praising the Saintus of the Phoenix people? You even said that you're not as good as the saint. Now you're saying that the Phoenix people's saint won't lose. If my guess is correct, the saint of the Phoenix people will definitely lose." Yi Chidong sighed softly. His gaze as he looked at Juan's back became even more complicated. When Juan attacked just now, he had already guessed that this person was Longwen, who had almost defeated the Phoenix People's Saintus in the Door of Darkness. Although this person had changed his appearance, his attacking methods had not changed. That was why Yi Chidong had such a guess. This person's level of abnormality had completely surpassed the Phoenix People Saintus. If this person hadn't been distracted at the end, the Phoenix People Saintus would definitely have lost. But what Yi Chidong found strange was that this Longwen had not been destroyed by the Phoenix People's Saintus Phoenix winged flame wheel at the Sorcerer God altar, and it had already been confirmed that he had fallen. Why had he appeared now? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Chidong in astonishment, as if it was the first time he had seen Yi Chidong. Then he shook his head and didn't say anything. In his opinion, Yi Chidong's conclusion was not reliable at all. He actually said that the Phoenix People Saintus would definitely lose. It was really a fallacy. In the human team, there were many people who had the same thoughts as the middle-aged man. They all thought that Juan had taken the initiative to provoke the Phoenix People Saintus. But what no one noticed was that the Phoenix People Saintus had a look of apprehension and fear on her face. Juan walked very slowly. However, the distance between him and the Phoenix People Saintus wasn't far. Soon, he was not far from the Phoenix People Saintus. A powerful aura suddenly emerged from the Phoenix People Saintus. Then the Saintus coldly looked at Juan and said, "You dare to take another step forward." Juan stopped and looked at the Phoenix People's Saintus with a strange expression. In the eyes of others, Everyone thought that Joan was afraid of the Phoenix People's Saintess, and that was why he stopped. However, the Phoenix People's Saintess knew that wasn't the case. It was because this guy saw that she was feeling guilty that he stopped. If you had answered my previous question, why wouldn't I have continued? Joan said indifferently. The Phoenix People's Saintess' beautiful eyes immediately turned cold. She knew what Joan's question was. She definitely couldn't answer this kind of question. Seeing that the Phoenix People's Saintess had become silent, Joan's gaze became even colder. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile, but it was a very cold smile. Since you won't say it, I have a way to make you say it. After saying this, Joan's body emitted a sparkling light. His right foot stomped on the void and shot out like a cannonball. His target was the Phoenix People's Saintess. You're courting death. Seeing that Joan actually dashed toward the Phoenix People's Saintess, the alien race experts sneered in their hearts. They felt that this person was in a hurry to be reincarnated. But soon, the Phoenix People's Saintess' next move slapped the alien race experts, who were extremely confident in the Saintess in the face. The Phoenix People's Saintess actually retreated the moment Joan dashed toward her. Moreover, the Saintess's speed was so fast that it was dazzling. Not long after she retreated, she had already taken out her flying divine weapon and immediately fled in a direction. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? The Phoenix People's Saintess was truly gifted. She was a famous young demon in the eldritch heavenly realm. Her strength had even surpassed most of the experts of the older generation. Originally, they had the impression that the Saintess would unleash a terrifying power and teach this arrogant human a lesson. Then, she would trample on him and destroy him. But now, the scene in front of them was too unexpected. The Saintess was actually running away in fear. Joan narrowed his eyes and immediately took out the space-time roulette. Then he used the space-time power and instantly escaped into the space-time tunnel. Ever since Joan had obtained the space-time crystal from Sharu's body, his control of the space-time power had reached an extremely high level. Now that he was using the space-time roulette, its speed was naturally much faster than before. The Phoenix People's Saintess and Joan soon disappeared from everyone's sight. Only then did the human and alien race teams react. Everyone was in an uproar. The Phoenix People's Saintess had actually fled. This shocked everyone. Chapter 3051. Suspicions, huh? The second elder of the Phoenix people, who had been fighting Senki In, Xiang Puyu, and Xiaojin, immediately realized that something was wrong when he saw the Saintess running away. He snorted coldly, and the flames on his body suddenly grew several times stronger. Waves of fire swept out like water ripples, spreading out in all directions at an extremely fast speed, shaking the entire space. Senki In, Xiang Puyu, and Xiaojin's expressions changed slightly, and they all took out their strongest divine artifacts to block in front of them. Bang! 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 3 muffled sounds rang out as the waves of fire swept over, almost shattering the divine artifacts around them. Then they all spat out mouthfuls of blood, their faces pale as they constantly retreated. This was clearly the second elder's strongest move. His face was clearly somewhat pale, and his breathing had also become hurried. After forcing Senki In and the other 2 to retreat, the second elder of the Phoenix people ignored the others and took a step forward, disappearing from where he stood. Everyone knew that the second elder of the Phoenix people had most likely gone to help the Saintess of the Phoenix people. That human race is probably finished. This was the thought in the hearts of all the humans and aliens. Exterminate all the aliens. San Qiyin and the other 2 were pleasantly surprised. With the departure of the 2 elders of the Phoenix clan, there were no more supreme experts at the level of sky-reaching masters in the alien army. On the other hand, there were 3 primary sky-reaching masters on their side. The following battle would be one-sided. In an instant, the morale of the humans was greatly boosted, and the aliens also knew that without the support of the transcending heaven masters, they were no match for the humans. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter and they all fled. The humans, on the other hand, were beating the dogs that had fallen into the water. They chased after the aliens and almost wiped them out completely. Senki In landed beside Gao Yanghong and watched the scene of the humans chasing after the aliens. He knew that even if he didn't join in, the aliens would be finished. At this moment, Senki In looked at Gao Yanghong with a solemn gaze and said in a deep voice, "Yanghong, is what you said true?" Gao Yanghong hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Sect Master, this is absolutely true. Back then, didn't Zhuowen enter the secret underground room? At that time, he shot a terrifying arrow from the secret underground room and destroyed the passage. I even suffered a minor injury. And this young man who suddenly appeared also shot the same arrow. His aura is almost exactly the same as the arrow Zhuowen shot from the secret underground room. Both are murderous and awe-inspiring." Senki's eyes glared in a murderous look. What a Zhuowen! He actually sneaked into the door of darkness. Today, I will definitely capture this kid. And I must get the Yamas. After Sun Qin called Gao Yanghong to go with him, the two of them turned into two streams of light and flew in the direction the two elders of the Phoenix clan left. Sun Qin's departure quickly attracted the attention of Xiang Puyu and In Shaojin. What's going on with Senki In? He actually chased after the Phoenix people's second elder? Is he courting death? Xiang Puyu muttered to himself, puzzled, and Shaojin also frowned. He sent a message to Senki In and quickly received a response. Xiang Puyu came over and read the message in Shaojin's communication talisman. A strange expression appeared on his face as he muttered to himself. When did Senki In become so enthusiastic? He actually wants to help that young man. I'm afraid he wants to recruit that young man into the 10 Extremes In Corp sect. That young man isn't simple, and we've never seen him before. I'm afraid he's a loose cultivator. And Shaojin said. Xiang Puyu nodded, then looked at the Yin and Yang Divine Sects team and asked in surprise, "Old Jin, I don't think I've seen Yi Hanfei. He didn't come out of the door of darkness?" And Shaojin suddenly remembered and looked at the Yin and Yang Divine Sects team. Sure enough, he didn't see Yi Hanfei. His expression changed slightly as he excused himself from Xiang Puyu and landed in the Yin and Yang Divine Sects team. Have you seen Yi Hanfei? And Shaojin asked with a gloomy face. He had a bad feeling. Could it be that Yi Hanfei had fallen in the door of darkness? The disciples of the Yin and Yang Divine Sect looked at each other and shook their heads. Yi Hanfei had escaped alone after being defeated by Zhuowen in the strange world. As for where he went, the disciples of the Yin and Yang Divine Sect didn't know. However, the disciples clearly told Shaojin about the conflict between Yi Hanfei and Longwen. After hearing this, and Shaojin's expression turned ugly. At the same time, he was shocked. Longwen was so strong that even Yi Hanfei was no match for him. At the same time, and Shaojin's gaze fell on Yao Xiangjuan. According to the disciples, Yao Xiangjuan had a good relationship with Longwen. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were calm as she took out a jade bottle from her spiritual ring and handed it to Shaojin. "Sect Master, this is the ancestral witch's blood essence. Brother Long went through a lot of trouble to obtain it. He told me to give this bottle of ancestral witch's blood essence to you to fulfill his promise." "What? Ancestral witch's blood essence?" And Shaojin was shocked. He hurriedly took the jade bottle that Yao Xiangjuan had given him and opened the cork. An extremely rich life, force, energy rushed out from it, and Shaojin quickly put the cork back on the bottle. His eyes flickered, and he couldn't calm down for a long time. He didn't expect that Zhuowen would really keep his promise and bring him a bottle of ancestral witch's blood essence. What about Longwen? And Shaojin asked anxiously. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes dimmed as she said, "Sect Master, Brother Long is really good at extracting ancestral witches' blood essence. He took most of the ancestral witches' blood essence. He asked me to bring this bottle to you to fulfill his promise. Unfortunately what? And Xiaojin asked anxiously when he heard that Zhuowen had obtained most of the ancestral witch's blood essence. If Zhuowen had really obtained so much ancestral witch's blood essence, he would have to ask Zhuowen for more even if he didn't want it. After all, the ancestral witch's blood essence was very useful for his cultivation. Brother Long has fallen. He was killed by the Phoenix People Saintess. Senior Brother Yi and Senior Brother Situ also saw it with their own eyes. Yao Xiangjuan sighed. What? He has fallen? In other words, most of the ancestral witch's blood essence was taken by the Phoenix People Saintess? And Xiaojin frowned. Yes, the Phoenix People Saintess also took away the inheritance of ancestral witch Gonggong. She was the one who benefited the most from the door of darkness. Yao Xiangjuan said, and Xiaojin sighed and didn't say anything. He also didn't ask about Yi Hanfei. Since Yi Hanfei hadn't come out until now, he had most likely fallen in the door of darkness. Moreover, and Xiaojin guessed that Yi Hanfei's fall should be related to Longwen. However, Longwen had also fallen in there. Naturally, he couldn't pursue this matter. Chapter 3052. Chase in the Void. 2 streams of flowing light flashed by. The one in front was bursting with flaming flowing light. It was so fast that only an illusory flame could be seen in the dark space. On the other hand, the streak of light behind him was faintly discernible, as if it was shuttling through a different space-time continuum. It was clearly very far away, but in the next moment it was as if space-time had been warped and had arrived right before him in the blink of an eye. The Phoenix People's Saintess sat on the deck of the Flying Divine artifact. She kept making hand seals with her jade-like hands. She kept transferring her heavenly energy to the Flying Divine artifact, making it go faster and faster. However, the Saintess of the Phoenix People was very flustered. She looked behind her from time to time and found that Zhuowen was actually very close behind her. There were no signs of him being shaken off at all. Her expression was very ugly. How does this guy know the power of space-time? And he's using it so skillfully, even more so than many space-time beasts. How did he do it? The Phoenix People's Saintess looked at Zhuowen, who had not only not been left behind, but was also getting closer and closer to her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Although she knew that many human cultivators had comprehended the laws of space-time and used the power of space-time, she was well aware that in terms of the use of the power of space-time, no other race in the starry sky could compare to the space-time beasts. Space-time beasts were born with an extremely sensitive perception of space-time energy. Moreover, their bodies would naturally contain space-time crystals. This allowed space-time beasts to get close to the laws of space-time and grasp space-time energy as soon as they were born. The space-time beasts were born with this ability, and as they continued to grow, their control of space-time power would become stronger and more terrifying. The Phoenix People's Saintess knew that some of the Phoenix people she belonged to had learned the power of time and space, but they could only grasp it roughly. No one could control the power of time and space as accurately as the space-time beasts. However, the space-time power that this man wielded was not inferior to that of the time beast race prodigy Sharu. He caught up. The Phoenix People's Saintess only felt the whistling sound behind her. Her beautiful eyes could not help but narrow. She looked behind her and saw that Zhuowen was driving the space-time roulette and was rapidly approaching her. The Phoenix People's Saintess's beautiful eyes flashed. She was about to continue urging the Flying Divine artifact to increase its speed, but her expression greatly changed. Then the Saintess of the Phoenix People of the Space of the Phoenix Peoples of the Space. Then the ripples of the ripples like broken glass and the space like a shattered. With a loud bang, the space in front of her shattered. A figure appeared in front of the Phoenix clan, holy maiden like a god descending to the world. Boom, boom, boom. This figure was very straightforward. The moment he appeared, he threw out a punch. The surface of his fist was covered with sparkling light. The power of the punch soared into the sky, as if it was going to shatter the sky. The saintess of the Phoenix people's pretty face changed greatly. She hurriedly retreated, but she found that the whistling sound behind her was still there, and it was getting closer and closer. She turned around abruptly and saw that Zhuowen was behind her. He was dressed in white and was still driving the space-time roulette. He was quickly chasing after her. In front of her, the person who was throwing the punch was also Zhuowen, but he was dressed in black. The two people in front and behind looked the same, but their clothes were different. They were like two black and white demons, sandwiching the saintess of the Phoenix people in the middle. The black-clothed Zhuowen was naturally a clone that had cultivated the Pangus sacred body, while the white-clothed Zhuowen was the original body. As soon as the Phoenix clan's holy maiden turned her attention to her back, Zhuowen had secretly separated his doppelganger and hid it somewhere. When Zhuowen was chasing after the Phoenix people saintess, he had already predicted her specific route in advance. That was why his clone could accurately intercept the saintess. "You can't escape." The black-clothed Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He stepped in front of the Phoenix people saintess. His right fist seemed to have traveled through time and space, glowing with a glass-like light. It quickly arrived in front of the saintess of the Phoenix people. The saintess of the Phoenix people's pretty face changed greatly. She waved her jade-like hand, and suddenly a raging red flame burst out from her palm. The Phoenix people's saintess blasted out a palm, but she did not directly hit the black-clothed Zhuowen in front of her. Instead, she quickly retreated and blasted her palm toward the white-clothed Zhuowen, who was sitting in the space-time roulette behind her. The Phoenix people's saintess's intuition was very accurate. She could tell at a glance that the black-clothed Zhuowen's strength was much stronger than the white-clothed Zhuowen behind her. If she chose to fight the black-clothed Zhuowen head-on, she would not be able to gain the slightest advantage. The white-clothed Zhuowen sat upright in the space-time roulette. His eyes were as calm as a demon's. He silently looked at the approaching saintess of the Phoenix people and the terrifying palm she had thrown out. It had to be said that the strength of the Phoenix people saintess was indeed terrifying. This palm should be the strongest palm she had ever used. The raging flames soared into the sky as if they were going to burn the entire sky. In the midst of the endless flames, a huge palm came crushing down. Around the flaming palm, one after another, the shadows of phoenixes danced and hovered. The surrounding temperature had reached a point where it was unbearable. The entire space seemed to be collapsing. The Phoenix people's saintess found it strange that the black-clothed Zhuowen behind her did not show any signs of worry. Instead, he continued to follow her closely. His fist was like a tracking missile, following her like a shadow. This made the Phoenix people's saintess very anxious. She could not wait to get rid of the white-clothed Zhuowen behind her, who was blocking her retreat. Boom! The terrifying flaming palm finally fell on the white-clothed Zhuowen's head. The white-clothed Zhuowen finally moved. With a flick of his finger, he quickly took out a blood-colored longbow. The moment he took out the longbow, he pinched an arrow with his right hand and pulled the bowstring. The arrow carried endless killing intent as it pierced through the air. In an instant, it blasted the surface of the flaming palm. Bang! 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 Continuous sounds could be heard from the flaming palm. Those sounds were very concentrated and very loud. As for the descending flaming palm, it was as if time had stopped. It stopped in midair. Countless sparks erupted from the flaming palm and poured down in midair like a rain of fire. It looked very gorgeous. The beautiful eyes of the Phoenix people's saintess widened. She saw with her own eyes that her most powerful palm had been shattered into countless sparks and turned into a rain of fire. The white-clothed Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. He looked at the flaming palm that had been destroyed and heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 3053. Interrogation as the flaming palm dissipated. The saintess of the Phoenix people couldn't help but take a few steps back. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. However, the power of the flaming palm was indeed not bad. The divine arrow that was filled with murderous intent was actually dissipated by the flaming palm. Zhuowin's eyes were filled with surprise. Although he had only shot out an ordinary divine arrow of the Genesis level, with the support of the Ho-E godly bow, the power of the divine arrow was comparable to that of an ordinary divine arrow of the creation level. It was evident that the all-out attack of the Phoenix People Saintess was indeed incredible. Boom! At that moment, the black-robed Zhuowin took a step forward and arrived not far from the Phoenix People Saintess. His right fist glowed with a crystalline light as he punched directly at the Saintess's back. The Saintess's beautiful eyes were piercingly cold. The blood in her body boiled as waves of flames surged out of her body, accompanied by an extremely terrifying and powerful aura. Boom! The Saintess still struck out with her palm. When the fist and the palm collided, a terrifying aura erupted. Immediately, the black-robed Zhuowin and the Saintess were both pushed back. However, the Saintess was pushed back more, and her beautiful face was pale. Clearly, she was completely at a disadvantage in this exchange. You burned your blood essence. Zhuowin's eyes narrowed as he watched the Saintess's aura continue to rise. He was somewhat surprised. The Saintess, on the other hand, quickly fled the moment she retreated. She had indeed burned her blood essence. Originally, she thought that she would be able to stop Zhuowin. She didn't expect that she would still be at a disadvantage. She knew very well that even if she burned her blood essence, she would still be no match for this person. The black-robed Zhuowin's body flashed and merged with his body. Using the power of time and space, he teleported out and once again blocked the path of the Phoenix People Saintess. What followed was another punch. This time, Zhuowin even used the profound meaning of the death of heaven and earth. The destructive power lingered on the surface of his fist, causing the power of his punch to reach an unprecedented level. The Saintess had no choice but to strike out with her palm again. Countless phantoms of the Phoenix swept out. Bang! Unfortunately, the energy in the Holy Maiden's palm was completely destroyed by Zhuowin's punch. The Holy Maiden spat out a mouthful of blood and was forced back. The moment the Saintess retreated, Zhuowin grabbed her right hand and used his free left hand to summon the Beast Bone Formation Plate. The Formation Plate surrounded the Saintess, and the restrictive power was extremely strong. For a moment, the Saintess was unable to move. I know you know where Qinshui is. As long as you tell me where Qinshui is, I won't make it hard for you and will immediately let you go. Zhuowin coldly looked at the Saintess in front of him. The Saintess of the Phoenix People sneered, but didn't say anything. She just looked to the side. Do you think I won't dare to do anything to you? Zhuowin was a little angry. He tore off the Saintess veil, revealing an appearance that was almost the same as Mu Qinshui's. Zhuowin stared at her in a daze for a while. Soon after, he found that the Saintess in front of him was indeed very similar to Mu Qinshui, but there were some differences in other areas. For example, on the left side of the Saintess' lips, there was an unremarkable red mole. Mu Qinshui didn't have this red mole. You really are bold. You actually dare to tear off my veil without permission. The Saintess angrily shouted. Zhuowin's lips were filled with a cold smile. He tore off the Saintess' sleeve, instantly revealing a large part of her snow-white skin. The Saintess' beautiful eyes opened wide. She looked at Zhuowin in disbelief and shouted, "Longwen, what are you trying to do?" Zhuowin gave a cold laugh. He completely ignored the Saintess, who was about to go crazy. He reached out with both hands and tore off the Saintess' sleeve, revealing a large part of her snow-white skin. Then Zhuowin took out a recording crystal and recorded everything that happened in front of the Saintess. "You pervert." The Saintess' beautiful eyes opened wide. She looked at the human in front of her in disbelief. She never thought that this fellow would be such a bad thing, actually having such thoughts about her. I'm not interested in you, but your attitude has angered me, so I did this. Tell me where Qinshui is. Otherwise, the things recorded in this recording crystal will be spread across the entire starry sky. Zhuowen coldly said. The saintess fell silent. Then she cried out in shock and said, Longwen, if you dare to do this, the Phoenix people and I will not let you go. You will be hunted down by the Phoenix people no matter where you go. Zhuowen gave a cold laugh and ignored the saintess' threat. Even if he did not spread the recording crystal, the Phoenix people would not let him go. He did not have any worries right now. He only wanted to know where Mu Qinshui was and where she was. He was a little worried that Mu Qinshui would be treated unfairly by the Phoenix people. If it really was like this, he would rush to the Phoenix people and bring Mu Qinshui back. Since you don't want to say it, then I'm sorry. I'll send the image of this recording crystal to all my friends, and they will naturally spread it. After Zhuowen said this, he took out the communication talisman and planned to send the image of the recording crystal. When the saintess saw Zhuowen's actions, she was scared witless. If this image was sent out, it would have a large impact on her reputation. At that time, she would not be able to raise her head in the great, desolate heaven domain anymore. Seeing that Zhuowen was really going to send it out, the saintess panicked and quickly said, Wait! Zhuowen did not care about the saintess at all. He had already opened the communication talisman and sent the image of the recording crystal to the communication talisman. I'll say it. The saintess opened her mouth again. Zhuowen finally stopped and coldly looked at Zhuowen. His expression was cold as he said, Then why haven't you said it yet? The saintess angrily looked at Zhuowen, but she found that the latter's expression was still terrifyingly calm. She could only lower her head and say, Our Phoenix people indeed have a person named Mu Qinshui, and she is a human. I've heard that this Mu Qinshui was brought back by the 3 clan elders from the 8 heavens domains. Zhuowen revealed a look of pleasant surprise and quickly said, Then how is Qinshui now? Also, why do you have the 99 Phoenix body? I remember that only Qinshui has this physique. The saintess' beautiful eyes sparkled, and finally she said in a deep voice, It's like this. That Mu Qinshui is a human, but she has the 99 Phoenix body. This is a very dangerous matter. The 99 Phoenix body is one of the strongest and most terrifying bloodlines in the history of the Phoenix people. It is a super physique rarely seen in 10,000 years. Once the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline is activated, if one does not have a strong physical body to support them, their body will collapse and their divine soul will be destroyed. That Mu Qinshui is a human, so if she activates her bloodline, she will die without a doubt. So, in order to protect Mu Qinshui's life, the clan elders transferred the 99 Phoenix bodies' bloodline from her to me. My bloodline is the highest grade among the Phoenix people, so I can completely withstand the 99 Phoenix bodies' bloodline. Chapter 3054. Second Elder, you extracted the 99 Phoenix bodies' bloodline from Qinshui? Zhuowen's eyes were filled with killing intent. Although he did not know much about the 99 Phoenix body, he knew how cruel and painful it was to transfer one's bloodline. He could imagine how much pain Mu Qinshui would have to suffer during the process of her bloodline being extracted. Is there anything wrong with that? If the 99 Phoenix body remained in Mu Qinshui's body, she would have died as a human. By transferring her bloodline to me, Mu Qinshui would have kept her life, right? The saintess trembled under Zhuowen's terrifying killing intent, but she still tried to defend herself. Despicable race. Perhaps you should have a taste of your bloodline being extracted. Zhuowen's eyes were cold as he placed his right hand on the saintess's forehead. Zhuowen used the power of the Pangu's sacred body to extract the 99 Phoenix bodies' bloodline from the saintess's body. Pangu had the strongest bloodline under the starry sky and was the origin of countless bloodlines. Although the 99 Phoenix body was strong, it was not as strong as the Pangus sacred body. It was because the Pangus sacred body's bloodline was at the peak that all other bloodlines had to submit to it. In other people's eyes, if they wanted to extract the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline, they would have to go through a very complicated process and spend a lot of manpower and resources. However, Zhuowen, who had the Pangus sacred body, did not need to go through so much trouble. With the advantage of the Panga bloodline, Zhuowen could easily extract any bloodline that was lower than the Panga bloodline. This was the advantage and privilege of the Panga bloodline. What are you doing? The Saintess felt the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline boiling and throbbing as if it was going to leave her body at any time. She finally panicked and asked Zhuowen loudly, "The 99 Phoenix body does not belong to you. I want to take it back." Zhuowen's voice was very cold. After saying this, he stopped talking and began to extract the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline from the Saintess's body. "No, don't," the Saintess of the Phoenix people screamed and began to beg, but Zhuowen ignored her. However, Zhuowen was very cautious. When he extracted the Saintess bloodline, he had already entered the space-time tunnel and used the art of divination to conceal his aura. An hour later, Zhuowen extracted all of the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline from the Saintess body and carefully placed it into a jade bottle. The Saintess collapsed on the ground, her body trembling. Her eyes were dull and lost. The intense pain made her lie on the ground, not wanting to move at all. "Longwen, one day, you will pay the price for what you did today." The Holy Maiden glared at Zhuowen with venomous eyes. Zhuowen ignored the Holy Maiden's gaze. With a wave of his sleeve, he took the Holy Maiden into his great world. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia were still in the great world. Zhuowen instructed the two of them to take good care of the Saintess before leaving the space-time tunnel. He planned to return to the Starry Sky Pagoda and inquire about the way to enter the Eldritch Heaven Realm. He learned from the Saintess that Mu Qinqiwei should still be alive. However, the Phoenix people probably didn't treat her as well. After all, the Phoenix people had extracted the 99 Phoenix bodies' bloodline from Mu Qinqiwei. This was the only thing that the Phoenix people valued about Mu Qinqiwei. In addition, Mu Qinqiwei was only a human. Her life in the Phoenix people would definitely not be easy. However, the moment Zhuowen left the space-time tunnel, his expression changed. He found that the space around him was abruptly ignited with terrifying flames. The scorching heat evaporated the surrounding air completely. An unprecedentedly terrifying pressure descended on Zhuowen's body. It made Zhuowen feel suffocated and suffocated. Zhuowen's body erupted with an intense crystalline light. At the critical moment, he immediately broke free from the terrifying pressure and retreated several hundred meters. Boom! The moment Zhuowen retreated, he immediately saw an incomparably huge flaming fist appear where he was originally standing. It smashed into the original spot, annihilating the space and dispersing it. Your reaction isn't bad." A surprised voice came from the void. Soon after, Zhuowen saw a figure slowly walking over from the void in front of him. When this figure arrived in the domain of flames, the surrounding fierce flames were like tamed hounds. All of them crawled at the feet of this person. This was an old man with a solemn expression. He wore a fiery red robe that seemed to merge with the surrounding flames. The moment Zhuowen saw this old man, his expression turned ugly. This was because this old man was the second elder of the Phoenix people. He was an expert at the early stage of the sky-piercing Master Realm. This second elder's strength was truly terrifying. He was able to suppress Senki Yin and the other two by himself. He was much stronger than an ordinary expert at the early stage of the sky-piercing Master Realm. Zhuowen was very afraid of this old man. At the same time, he was also a little shocked. This old man didn't care about the foreign race team and chased after him. It seemed like this old man attached great importance to the Phoenix People Saintess. Where's the Saintess? The second elder landed in the domain of flames and looked at Zhuowen's body that was emitting a sparkling light. He slowly narrowed his eyes and asked indifferently, "I didn't catch up to the Saintess. She escaped in that direction. You can go in that direction to look for her." Zhuo Wen pointed behind him and lied without blushing or skipping a beat. "Do you really think I'm an idiot? I'm very sensitive to the Saintess's aura. I chased all the way here, and the Saintess's aura was cut off here, and you appeared here. The Saintess must have been captured by you." The second elder looked at Zhuo Wen, no longer concealing the killing intent in his eyes. "What, you want to kill me?" Zhuo Wen knew that he couldn't hide it from the second elder, so he didn't plan to hide it anymore. Instead, he slowly narrowed his eyes and said firmly. The second elder frowned slightly. The Saintess was captured by this person, so her life was definitely in his hands. If he killed her, the Saintess might be in danger. "Let go of the Saintess, and I can let you go. Also, I'll let bygones be bygones for offending the Saintess." The second elder retracted his killing intent and said indifferently, "I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in letting go of the Saintess." Zhuo Wen retreated step by step. The moment he retreated to the edge of the domain of flames, he took out an escape talisman and crushed it. His whole body turned into a stream of light and disappeared on the spot. "You can't escape." The second elder's eyes were calm. He stomped his right foot, and the surrounding flames suddenly surged. Then he turned into countless sparks and disappeared on the spot. In the dark and cold void, a stream of light flashed and appeared on top of a meteorite. This person was Zhuo Wen, dressed in white. Zhuo Wen's face didn't look too good. He looked behind him and saw that not far behind him, a stream of fire was quickly chasing after him. It was like a sticky candy that he couldn't shake off. Damn it, I used 3 billion miles talismans, and I still can't shake off this old guy. Chapter 3055. Rise to fame. The atmosphere in the space where the Starry Sky Tower was located was extremely solemn. With the Starry Sky Tower as the core, streaks of light flowed in the sky above the 4 camps, forming a curtain-like barrier. If Zhuo Wen were to come to the Starry Sky Tower, he would definitely be shocked. This was because the barrier formed by the streaks of light was a very high-level formation restriction that far surpassed the Genesis level. This was the first time that the 4 space camps had activated all their defensive restrictions. The human cultivators in the Starry Sky Tower all held divine weapons and guarded the edge of the camp. Their cold gazes passed through the barrier and looked outside the camp. In the pitch-black void outside the Starry Sky Tower, a black mass of foreign races floated and looked at the Starry Sky Tower covetously. If it weren't for the fact that these foreign races were wary of the formation restrictions in the camp, they would probably have attacked in groups by now. At this moment, 4 figures floated above the tall and majestic Starry Sky Tower. The 4 figures looked very ordinary, but the movements of the 4 of them contained power that could shatter the world. Below the Starry Sky Tower, all the human clan cultivators looked at the 4 figures with awe and respect in their eyes. I really didn't expect the 4 Tao Masters to appear as well. It seems like the invasion of the foreign races this time has caused a huge commotion. Nonsense! Didn't you see those foreign races? I saw at least 7 races, and all of them are strong races among the 10 great races. And this is because I didn't count clearly. If I did, the number of races would probably be far greater than you, and I can imagine. Many of the humans gathered below the Starry Sky Tower were discussing spiritedly. They looked at the countless foreign races in the void outside the Starry Sky Tower with worried gazes. The invasion of the foreign races had come too suddenly. At that time, the human race in the Starry Sky battlefield had been caught off guard and had lost too many humans. If the 4 Tao Lords hadn't joined forces in the end and made a prompt decision to activate the powerful formation hidden within the camp, the entire Starry Sky Pagoda and the camp would have been destroyed by the surprise attack. The 4 headmasters were the representatives of the 4 interstellar camps in the astral battlefield. They were very powerful, surpassing the leaders of most Tao palaces and reaching the mid-level of Taoist master. Among them was the Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua. When Zhou had first entered the Eastern Cosmic Camp, he had heard about him from Ghost Plume and knew that he was an extremely powerful and terrifying existence. Tan Xinghua was a middle-aged scholar with a pale face and no beard. His gaze was very serious as he looked at the black mass of outsiders in the void outside. Then his gaze landed on the three people beside him, and he said, "Brother Liu, Brother Yao, Brother Mei, the top 10 races of the primitive heavenly realm have all moved out. They are determined to get the Starry Sky Pagoda. Even though the Starry Sky campsite's formations are impregnable, I'm not sure if these formations will be able to withstand the attacks of these foreign races." The Western Taoist master, L.V. Yelyang, was an old man with a solemn expression. His aged voice slowly rang out as he solemnly said, "As long as we defend the Starry Sky Tower to the death, even if the 10 major races join forces to attack, it is unlikely that they will be able to break through." That's right. Brother Liu is right. The Starry Sky Tower is surrounded by a Skypiercer formation. This was set up by Taoist 3 purities in the past and requires us to work together to maintain it. As long as we don't go out and fight, we will be able to defend the Starry Sky Tower. The Northern Taoist master, Yao Jianyuan, agreed. The Southern Taoist master, Mei Zian, suddenly spoke up. "I heard that the corpse of ancestral Shaman Gonggong has appeared at the Door of Darkness. Many of our human race's experts and young geniuses have gone there. Moreover, most of the geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution ranking have gone to the Door of Darkness. Now that the outsiders are pressuring us, are we just going to ignore the geniuses who have gone to the Door of Darkness?" The moment the Southern Taoist master, Mei Zian, said this, the other 3 Taoists fell silent. They all, subconsciously, looked at the Starry Sky contribution, ranking not too far away. Earlier, they had already seen that many names on the Starry Sky contribution ranking had dimmed significantly. They all knew that the owners of those dimmed names had most likely perished in the Door of Darkness. These geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution ranking were the most elite of the younger generation in the Xianmi heavenly region. They were the most promising geniuses who would become the master of heaven ascension in the future. To put it bluntly, these geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution ranking were the future hope of the Xianmi heavenly region. This was especially so for the top 10 geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution ranking. Each and every one of them was outstanding and would definitely reach the heights of the Master of Heaven Ascension. These geniuses were currently at the Door of Darkness. Now that the outsiders were blocking their path, wouldn't the humans who had gone to the Door of Darkness be doomed if they came out? "Sai, I have already informed many of our friends who are on the Starry Sky contribution ranking in the Starry Sky camp about the current situation. I want those cultivators who have gone to the Door of Darkness to hide as much as possible and not return to the Starry Sky camp." The Eastern Taoist master, Tan Xinghua, said helplessly. The other 3 Taoists looked at each other and nodded helplessly. This was the only solution they had at the moment. The Starry Sky camp was already in a state of panic. With the enemy before them, they couldn't possibly open the Starry Sky Tower's array formation for the people who had gone to the Door of Darkness. Suddenly, an uproar from the cultivators below the Starry Sky Tower attracted the attention of the 4 Taoists. All the cultivators retracted their gazes from the outsiders in the Starry Sky Tower, and surprisingly, all of them looked at the Starry Sky contribution ranking in the plaza in front of the Starry Sky Tower. What's going on?" Tan Xinghua was a little puzzled as he looked at the crowd that was in an uproar. Now that the enemy was right in front of them, what else could cause such a huge commotion? This made Tan Xinghua puzzled. Therefore, Tan Xinghua retracted his gaze from the Starry Sky contribution ranking and looked at it again. In an instant, his body froze as he stared blankly at the first place on the ranking. The first place on the ranking should have belonged to Zhongli Haoyan, but Zhongli Haoyan had become the second place. The first place was a very unfamiliar name. He had never even heard of the name Longwen. Longwen? I have never heard of this name among the younger generation. Could it be that this person isn't a disciple of a Tao palace? Tan Xinghua muttered to himself as his gaze landed on the points behind Long Wen's name. Instantly, his body shook as if he had been struck by lightning. This was because the points behind Long Wen's name was actually 1,053,000 points, which was a total of 800,000 points, more than Zhongli Haoyan, who was in second place. Chapter 3056. The combination of sheep and tongue. His points have reached over 1 million. Long Wen was ranked in the 30s before this. It hasn't been long, and he's already in first place with over 1 million points. Don't tell me that this guy killed a heaven-span outsider in the blink of an eye? Western sect master L.V. Yelyang's eyes shone with disbelief. The speed at which his points soared was too strange and abnormal. It's possible that Long Wen really did kill a master of heaven-level alien race. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to have 1 million points. I'm just wondering how he did it. Southern sect master Meizian narrowed his eyes and said in a shocked tone, "This Long Wen might be an even more terrifying monster than Zhong, Li, and Haoyan. If such a monster can continue to develop, his future will be limitless. We have to find this Long Wen. Let's make an announcement and ask if anyone in the space camp recognizes this Long Wen." Northern sect master Yao Jianyuan was more impatient. He immediately took out his communication jade talisman and sent a message about Long Wen to all the cultivators in the space camp. After all, he was the sect master of the space camp, and his communication jade talisman had great authority. Any cultivator in the space camp could receive the messages sent by the sect master. However, what disappointed Northern sect master Yao Jinyuan was that most of the messages sent by the cultivators did not recognize this cultivator called Long Wen. This Long Wen is really mysterious. No one in the space camp knows him, Eastern sect master Tan Xinghua said. There's another possibility. This Long Wen is a fake name. He might not want others to know his real name, Western sect master L.V. Yelyang said. This kid's points soared not long ago. I'm afraid he's part of the group that entered the door of darkness. I hope he's lucky and doesn't die so easily. A genius like him is hard to come by. Northern sect master Yao Jianyuan sighed. Although the 4 sect masters were very curious about Long Wen and couldn't wait to meet him, they knew that they couldn't go out and look for him with the alien race army in front of them. They only hoped that this junior called Long Wen could survive the great calamity this time. When Long Wen's points soared to more than 1 million, it caused an uproar among countless cultivators in the Starry Sky Tower. In the void outside the Starry Sky Tower, the foreign race army was ready to make a move. At the very front of the outsider army, more than 10 powerful figures floated in the air. These dozen or so figures looked like humans from afar, but upon closer inspection, they were quite different from humans. Like a dark cloud, the outsider army stood orderly behind these 10 or so figures. Apparently, these 10 or so figures held high positions in the outsider army. Among these dozen or so figures, the most eye-catching one should be the one standing at the very front. This figure was 30 feet tall. His skin was bright red, and his muscles were bulging. His appearance was very similar to that of a human, but there were scarlet bloodstains on his face. These bloodstains were like veins that expanded on his face, making him look very ferocious and terrifying. I didn't expect the sorcerer tribe to send the famous war god of the sorcerer tribe, the sheep-tongue combination. Standing beside the 10-meter-tall giant was a charming woman. There was a fiery red phoenix mark between her eyebrows, and as she walked, the shadow of a fiery feather flashed behind her back. It was as if she could ascend to immortality at any moment. Mu Yu, the great elder of the Phoenix people, is of noble status. Didn't you come with us? Moreover, I also heard that the second elder of the Phoenix tribe has also come. However, he has gone to the door of darkness. The goat-tongue combination of the sorcerer tribe glanced at the charming woman and spoke in a neutral tone. The great elder of the Phoenix people, Muyu, glanced at the sheep-tongue combination of the sheep-tongue combination and said with a faint smile, "I heard that there are clues about the corpse of ancestor sorcerer Gongong at the door of darkness, so I sent second great elder to check it out. But the sorcerer tribe doesn't seem to be interested in ancestor sorcerer Gongong at all. You didn't even send anyone to check it out." The sheep-tongue combination of the sorcerer tribe said indifferently, "The sorcerer tribe's priests predicted that the corpse of ancestor sorcerer would only appear in the eldritch heavenly realm. It would not appear anywhere else. The 3 ancestral magi corpses that our sorcerer clan obtained were found in the untainted heavenly realm." Mu Yu shrugged her shoulders. In the shaman tribe, priests had a very high status and had the ability to predict the future. Most of the shaman tribe members believed in the priests' prophecies. If your priests really said so, then perhaps the news of the corpse of ancestral, which Gongong in the door of darkness, is false. Looks like Elder Hong and Biling made a wasted trip. Mu Yu frowned slightly and spoke in a slightly helpless tone. Biling should be the new saintess chosen by the Phoenix people, right? I heard that she has the 99 Phoenix body, and her name has spread across the entire primitive heavenly realm in just over 10 years. Even our Wu Xingyuan is interested in the saintess of your Phoenix people." The Yangtang combination glanced at Mu Yu and said, Biling is just lucky. Brother Yangtang, you flatter me." Although Mu Yu spoke modestly, her eyes were filled with pride and arrogance. It was obvious that she was very satisfied with the new saintess of the Phoenix people. The Yangtang combination smiled and said indifferently, if there's a chance, I really want to meet the saintess of your Phoenix people. After the matter at the door of darkness is over, when Elder Hong and Biling return, you can go and meet her." Mu Yu smiled. "Then I'm looking forward to it." The Yangtang combination smiled. Immediately after, he saw Mu Yu take out the communication jade talisman from her waist. After checking the message, her expression changed drastically. The Yangtang combination saw the change in Mu Yu's expression and asked in surprise, "Great clan elder, what happened?" Mu Yu put away the communication jade talisman. Although she forced herself to calm down, the Yangtang combination could still see the unconcealable anxiety in Mu Yu's beautiful eyes. "It's a message from Elder Hong. Almost all the foreign races that went to the door of darkness were wiped out, and the leader of the merfolk race, Su Long, has fallen." Mu Yu's beautiful eyes flickered as she said softly, "What? Su Long has fallen?" The Yangtang combination's pupils constricted, and he revealed an expression of disbelief. Su Long was the leader of the merfolk race and an early-stage Heaven Ascension Lord Expert. The Yangtang combination naturally knew him. However, he found it hard to believe that an early-stage Heaven Ascension Lord Expert like Su Long had actually fallen. After all, Heaven Ascension Lord Experts were already extremely powerful, and it was very difficult for them to fall. If one wanted to kill an early-stage Heaven Ascension Lord Expert like Su Long, one would at least need to be at the mid-stage Heaven Ascension Lord Cultivation. Moreover, one would have to pay a huge price to accomplish it. In the human race, besides experts at the level of the 4 Tao Masters and above, who else could kill Su Long? The Yangtang combination also knew that the 4 Tao Masters were currently in the camp, so it was naturally impossible for them to appear at the door of darkness. Chapter 3057. General Attack. Yes, Elder Hong wouldn't lie. Su Long has indeed fallen. It's said that the one who killed Su Long is a human cultivator called Long Wen. That human cultivator's cultivation isn't high, and he obtained the inheritance of ancestor Shaman Gongong in the door of darkness. At this point, Twilight Rain hesitated, not knowing what to say. What? Ancestor Shaman Gongong's corpse is really in the door of darkness? The yang-tongued ensemble's pupils shrank, and he continued to ask, "What's the cultivation of that human called Long Wen?" He actually obtained the inheritance of Ancestor Shaman. Unbelievable. It's said that he's only an eternal lord. Muyu smiled bitterly and helplessly. She even suspected that the information sent by Elder Hong was fake. However, she knew Elder Hong very well. She knew that Elder Hong wasn't someone who liked to joke. He was always meticulous in his work and would never lie. However, she was still shocked by the news, so much so that she couldn't help but doubt its authenticity. The yang-tongued ensemble was also stunned. He looked at Muyu strangely and didn't say anything. Muyu could see that the yang-tongued ensemble didn't believe her. No matter how heaven-defying an eternal lord was, he was still an ant-like existence in front of a master of heaven-piercing. How could he possibly kill an early master of heaven-piercing? This news sounded like nonsense. "Brother yang-tongued, I might have to leave for a while." Muyu continued. "What's wrong? Great Elder, are you planning to avenge Sulong and go to the Door of Darkness to find Long Wen?" The yang-tongued ensemble shook his head and smiled. "That's not it. It's just that Long Wen captured the saintess of the Phoenix people. He's extremely daring. I need to confirm it." Muyu said, "With Elder Hong here, I think it's unnecessary for you to go there. Moreover, it's a critical moment in the war between us and the human race. You can't leave at will." The yang-tongued ensemble whispered. Muyu frowned. She actually wanted to leave, but the yang-tongued ensemble had a very high status in the shaman tribe and even the entire primitive heaven realm. Moreover, he was representing the shaman tribe this time. Muyu did not want to offend the shaman tribe and the yang-tongued union. After weighing the pros and cons, she decided to stay. She was very clear about Old Hong's strength. He was much stronger than Sulong. In the message sent by Old Hong, she also knew that Long Wen had killed Sulong because the human clan's heaven-piercing master had risked his life to pin down Long Wen. Right now, that Long Wen was exhausted from running for his life. With Elder Hong's strength, this Long Wen was naturally easily captured. The Starry Sky Tower is surrounded by a heaven-piercing formation left behind by the human race tens of thousands of years ago. Our foreign race is not good at formations. I'm afraid it won't be that easy to attack the Starry Sky Tower. Muyu frowned as she looked at the Starry Sky Tower that was shrouded in a barrier formed by countless streams of light. "We can only attack now. After so many years, the priests of the Voodoo tribe have a rough understanding of the restrictive formations of the Starry Sky Tower." He also pointed out some of the weak points of this formation. "As long as we attack these weak points together, the Starry Sky Tower's restrictive formations shouldn't be able to hold on for too long." As the yang-tongued union spoke, he took out a formation diagram and handed it to Muyu. "Make more than 10 copies and give them to the leaders of the various tribes. Then, I will distribute the places that we need to attack. This time, we must take down the human clan's Starry Sky Tower." Muyu took the formation diagram and looked at the dozen or so marks on the diagram. She knew that these should be the dozen or so weak points of the Starry Sky Tower's formation. Muyu followed the yang-tongued union's instructions and made more than 10 copies. After distributing them to the leaders of the various tribes, she returned to the yang-tongued union's side. "Brother yang-tongued, everything has been arranged. We are just waiting for your orders," Muyu said. The yang-tongued union nodded and then transmitted his voice to the leaders of the various tribes behind him. "Everyone has seen the formation diagram, right? Now, I will announce the corresponding weak points that you will be responsible for. The shaman tribe will be in charge of the first place, the Phoenix people will be in charge of the second place, the Dragon clan will be in charge of the third place, the Space-Time Beast clan will be in charge of the 15th place. Now, everyone, let's attack together. Take down the Starry Sky Tower, and all the resources of the human race will be up to you. Let these ants of the human race see the strength of our foreign race." After the Yang-tongued Union finished speaking, he led the shaman tribe's troops and charged towards the Starry Sky Tower. Then the Phoenix people, the Dragon Clan, and all the foreign races that came here followed. The black mass of the foreign race army was like a black cloud pressing down from the sky. It was a spectacular and terrifying sight. Oh no! The foreign races have launched an all-out attack. The 4 Tao Masters floated above the Starry Sky Tower. Their gazes were solemn as they began to use their communication jade talismans to send voice transmissions to all the cultivators in the Starry Sky Tower. They asked them to return to their positions and maintain the powerful heaven-piercing formation on the Starry Sky Tower. Even if this heaven-piercing formation didn't need cultivators to maintain it, it could still operate. However, its defensive power would be weaker. However, if there were countless cultivators maintaining it with their heaven path energy, it was equivalent to obtaining additional energy out of thin air. Naturally, the formation would be much stronger than usual. Even the brilliance on the surface of the formation would be much, much more intense. Bang! 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 In the instant that the formation became brighter, countless foreign races' troops had already crashed onto the surface of the formation. Dense energy ripples appeared on the surface of the formation as if a stone had fallen onto the surface of the water. The entire formation shook violently as if it was about to collapse at any moment. Damn it! These foreign races actually know the weak points of the formation. Didn't they say that the foreign races aren't good at formations? The Eastern Tao Master, Tan Xinghua, immediately noticed that the foreign races were attacking the weak points of the formation. His expression didn't look too good. Not all the foreign races aren't good at formations. It's said that the priests of the shaman tribe are naturally good at formations and alchemy, although they might not be as good as the top divine formation masters and alchemists of the human race. They aren't too bad either. At the very least, they can find the weak points of the formation. The Western Tao Master, LV Yelyang, shrugged and continued, "You should be thankful that the foreign races didn't find the foundation of the formation. Otherwise, the formation would have been destroyed. We can't let this go on. If we let the foreign races continue attacking the weak points of the formation, the Starry Sky Pagoda's formation won't be able to hold on for too long. We have to take the initiative to attack." The Southern Tao Master, Mei Zian, said, "I agree with Brother Mei's point of view. We have to take the initiative to attack and share some of the pressure from the formation." The Northern Tao Master, Yao Jianyuan, agreed. "All right, the 4 of us will each lead a team to battle. However, remember, don't stray too far from the formation. We can use the advantage of the formation to slowly wear down the foreign races." The Eastern Tao Master, Tan Xinghua, nodded. Next, the 4 Tao Lords gathered close to 10,000 cultivators from their respective camps, and they flew out from their respective camps to meet the nearest foreign invaders. Chapter 3058. The pursuit of the 2 elders. The attack of the 4 Tao Lords immediately disrupted the attack of the foreign races, and many of them died at the hands of the 4 Tao Lords. "You guys continue to attack the formation here. I'll go and meet the 4 Tao Lords." The Yang-tongued Union, who was commanding the sorcerer tribe to attack the formation, could no longer sit still when he saw that the 4 Tao Lords had all moved out. He leaped up and shot towards the Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua. Bang! Tan Xinghua shook the meteor whip in his right hand, and the whip was like a nimble snake as it destroyed several foreign races that were rushing towards him. Tan Xinghua was about to attack the other foreign races when his expression changed slightly. He swung the whip towards the left, and electric sparks flickered on the surface of the whip, making it look exceptionally gorgeous and dazzling. Rumble! A powerful force came crashing down and actually blasted the whip away. Tan Xinghua couldn't help but retreat. Only then did he realize that the one who had attacked him was a 30 feet tall giant with many bloody scars on his face. He was naturally familiar with this giant. He was the leader of the sorcerer tribe, the Yang-tongued Union, and was also a famous war god in the sorcerer tribe. His cultivation was the same as Tan Xinghua's, and he was also at the middle stage of the sky-reaching master realm. Tan Xinghua, is it fun to bully some juniors? I'll meet you with the Yang-tongued Union. The Yang-tongued Union had an indifferent look in his eyes. He held a giant axe in his hand, and with a stomp of his right foot, the giant axe blasted towards Tan Xinghua at lightning speed. Tan Xinghua's expression changed slightly. The Yang-tongued Union gave him a lot of pressure, and he was definitely not an ordinary expert at the middle stage of the sky-reaching master realm. Tan Xinghua had to be careful when dealing with him. Tan Xinghua swung his right hand, and countless bolts of lightning flashed on the surface of the whip. In the blink of an eye, it blasted towards the giant axe of the Yang-tongued Union. Bang! 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 Countless sparks flew as the two collided, and it was as if countless stars had exploded. The terrifying aftershock spread out, and it was so violent and shocking. The humans and foreign races who were fighting nearby were caught off guard and were affected by the aftershock. They didn't even make a sound before they were blasted into a bloody mist, and they couldn't be any more dead. Learning from the mistakes of those dead human beings and non-humankind beings, the other non-humankind beings and non-humankind beings in the area all stayed far away. A battle between two mid-heaven-span lords was not something they could approach, unless they were tired of living. The Grand Elder of the Phoenix people, Mu Yu, shot toward the Western Tao Lord, Elvi Yelyang, and pinned him down. The other two mid-stage Heaven Conduit Masters also charged towards the Northern Tao Lord, Yao Jinyuan, and the Southern Tao Lord, Mei Zi. Soon, they were engaged in a fierce battle. The terrifying shock waves of the battle spread out around the four camps, forming a terrifying no-man's land. All the humans and foreign races subconsciously distanced themselves from the four battlefields. In the void extremely far away from the celestial battlefield, a stream of light shot out from a space-time tunnel and hid in the nearest abandoned planet. This was a young man with rosy lips and white teeth. In the instant that he concealed himself on the abandoned planet, he immediately pulled out a crimson longbow, and 3 Genesis divine arrows appeared in his right palm. This person was none other than Zhuowen. He had been fleeing for 3 days and 3 nights, and he had used 9 billion-mile talismans. These 9 billion-mile talismans had been obtained by Zhuowen from the spirit rings of the human and non-humankind experts he had killed in the Door of Darkness. One had to admit that the billion-mile talismans were indeed very fast. The second elder of the Phoenix people could not catch up with him at all. But what made Zhuowen helpless was that he could not shake off the second elder of the Phoenix people either. After all, the second elder was an expert of the Phoenix people and possessed the Phoenix bloodline. Phoenixes were known for their speed, so the speed of the second elder gave Zhuowen a headache. Otherwise, he would not have been unable to shake off the old man even after using 9 billion-mile talismans. Zhuowen knew that since he could not shake off the old man, the only way was to seriously injure or kill him. Zhuowen also knew that the old man was very powerful. Even if he exposed his trump card, it would still be very difficult to kill the second elder of the Phoenix people. However, if he could seriously injure the old man, Zhuowen would have a chance to shake him off. Whoosh! 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 Zhuowen pulled the bowstring to a full moon and immediately released it. The sound of the bowstring piercing through the air like thunder rang out, and the 3 arrows turned into 3 crimson lights that streaked across the void and swept toward the void in front of the abandoned planet. Far away, a fiery red stream of light could be seen rushing toward them. Upon closer inspection, it was an old man whose entire body was surrounded by flames. This old man was the second elder of the Phoenix people. At this moment, the second elder of the Phoenix people stared coldly at the abandoned planet in front of him. His divine sense had already locked onto Zhuowen, so he already knew the moment Zhuowen hid on the abandoned planet. Just as the second elder of the Phoenix people was about to rush toward the abandoned planet to find Zhuowen hiding on the planet, he sensed 3 terrifying auras rushing toward him. Immediately, the second elder of the Phoenix people discovered that 3 divine arrows with terrifying killing intent had turned into 3 directions and were converging toward him at an extremely fast speed. Humph! Insignificant tricks. The second elder of the Phoenix clan coldly snorted. He waved his sleeves, and the flames around him turned into 3 huge fire phoenixes. They suddenly rushed out and charged toward the 3 divine arrows that were flying toward them. Bang! Bang! However, to the surprise of the second elder of the Phoenix people, the 3 fire phoenixes that he had conjured were pierced by the 3 divine arrows and shattered into countless sparks. Immediately after, the 3 divine arrows pierced through the air and came toward him. The second elder of the Phoenix people didn't panic. Instead, he took a few steps back, kicked his right foot, and moved his body to the side. The first arrow brushed past his waist. At this moment, the second elder of the Phoenix people used his right hand as a knife and slashed down, cutting the divine arrow into 2. The second elder of the Phoenix people's body movement technique was very impressive. Under the attack of the 3 divine arrows, he dodged them with ease and used the gaps in his dodging to destroy all 3 divine arrows. After destroying the 3 divine arrows, the second elder of the Phoenix people refocused his attention on the abandoned planet in front of him. He said coldly, "Human, you can't escape." On the abandoned planet, Zhouen's face darkened when he saw the second elder of the Phoenix people easily destroy the 3 divine arrows. He sighed softly and took out the blood-stained horn. He knew that if he wanted to hurt the second elder of the Phoenix people, ordinary creation-level divine arrows wouldn't be able to do it. He could only use Ho Yi's divine arrows. When Zhouwen pulled the string of Ho Yi's divine arrows to a full moon, a terrifying killing intent soared into the sky. Chapter 3059. Aureole behind the pupils of the Phoenix people's second elder shrank as he immediately sensed an even more terrifying killing intent. It wasn't the first time he had sensed such a killing intent. Back then, when Su Long died on that blood-stained horn, it also carried this tyrannical and terrifying killing intent. Whoosh! A thunderous roar was heard, and the Phoenix people's second elder immediately saw the true face of that killing intent. A blood-stained horn shot out from the abandoned planet, advancing courageously and fearlessly, like a god of death descending. It really is the divine arrow that killed Su Long. The Phoenix people's second elder's gaze turned serious. He stopped in place and flicked his finger, taking out a fan made of fire plume. The second elder formed a seal with his right hand and pointed at the fan. Countless fiery red runes appeared on the surface of the fan, emitting a blazing flame. The second elder abruptly fanned his fan forward, and a gust of hot wind swept over. This hot wind wasn't invisible, but was formed by flames of various colors. These flames were like angry dragons, and they were extremely fast as they shot toward the blood arrow. In an instant, the blood arrow was enveloped by the flames, forming a flame barrier. However, although the flame barrier looked very sturdy and terrifying, it collapsed under the bombardment of the blood arrow. The second elder's gaze was very serious. After the flame barrier was destroyed, the fan in his hand danced, and he attacked with lightning speed. Bang! 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 In just an instant, the fan and the blood arrow collided no less than 100 times. Every collision caused sparks to fly, and the killing intent was awe-inspiring. The second elder took a step back with every collision, and his expression became more unsightly. The terror of the blood arrow was somewhat beyond his expectations. Damn it! This second elder of the Phoenix people is too strong. Even Ho Yi's divine arrow can't do anything to him. On the abandoned planet, Zhouwen's gaze was gloomy. Although it seemed like the second elder was at a disadvantage now, he knew that with the second elder's continuous bombardment, Ho Yi's divine arrow's momentum was constantly weakening, and the killing intent on the arrow was also constantly dissipating. Zhouwen knew that within 100 hits, Ho Yi's divine arrow would be completely suppressed by the second elder. When that time came, it would be Zhuowen's time to die. I must take advantage of this opportunity to escape. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He bit his lips, took out the space-time roulette, and escaped into the space-time tunnel and instantly disappeared. Zhuowen made this decision. It was somewhat difficult. The Ho Yi divine arrow was an extremely powerful trump card of Zhuowen. Now that he was fleeing, it meant that he had given up on the Ho Yi divine arrow. But Zhuowen, Ho Yi's divine arrow's arrow at most, injuring the Phoenix people. But if Zhuowen didn't escape, now was the second time with Zhuowen? The Phoenix people force was Zhuowen's studio art. Studio Zhuowen, Lu Studio was Studio Lu Studio. The second elder, who was tangling with Ho Yi's divine arrow, naturally noticed Zhuowen's escape, and his eyes revealed a look of anxiety. However, Ho Yi's divine arrow's killing intent was too terrifying. He couldn't completely suppress it now, and could only wait a little longer. Damn it! The second elder's eyes turned crimson red. He kept on waving his fan, causing endless flames to swirl in the air. It was a horrifying sight. Under the second elder's crazy bombardment, Ho Yi's divine arrow finally stopped. The terrifying killing intent on the surface of the arrow was also dissipated by the flames of the fan. The second elder grabbed Ho Yi's divine arrow in his hand. He didn't even have time to look at the terrifying arrow. After putting it into his spirit ring, he chased after Zhuowen. Not long after, the second elder returned to the abandoned planet, and his face turned green. Just now, he chased with all his might, but he couldn't find any trace of Zhuowen. To put it simply, he lost track of him. Zhuowen kept running. In the space-time tunnel, he kept switching between the tunnel and the speed. In order to not leave any traces, Zhuowen carefully chose the places where he entered and exited the space-time tunnel. No one could tell which space-time tunnel he entered and exited, although Zhuowen couldn't sense the second elder of the Phoenix peoples or at all. He still didn't let down his guard. Instead, he continued to fly for 3 days and 3 nights. Finally, he left the dark ancient city and stopped in a remote crevice between meteorites. Bang! However, the moment Zhuo Wangang entered the gap between the meteors suddenly exploded. Invisible ripples of explosion spread out like endless waves. Thump! Thump! The moment the meteorite exploded, Zhuowen felt that something was wrong. He immediately rushed out of the crevice. However, he was still hit by the aftermath of the explosion. His face was slightly pale. His chest, left hand, and left leg were directly blown apart, and his flesh was badly mutilated. If it weren't for his powerful Pangu's sacred body, Zhuowen's injuries would have been more serious. Although Zhuowen's current strong recovery ability could heal these injuries quickly, he didn't. This recovery ability was his trump card, and he didn't want to expose it easily. Moreover, with his injuries so serious, the person who was secretly playing tricks behind him should also appear. He wanted to see who was playing tricks on him. He had already ruled out the possibility of the second elder of the Phoenix people. With the second elder's powerful strength, he really didn't want to play tricks on him. Ha! Zhuowen! Let's see if you can still escape this time. A cold voice came. 2 figures rushed out from behind a medium-sized meteorite in the distance. The moment Zhuowen saw the 2 people, his eyes narrowed slightly. However, they quickly returned to normal. He said doubtfully, "So it's sect leader Sun and Elder Gao of the 10 Extremes Corp sect. May I know why the 2 of you are looking for me? And the meteorite explosion just now was caused by the 2 of you? We are all humans. Why did you do that?" Zhuowen's tone was slightly resentful. The one who spoke was Gao Yanhong. He was standing beside Senki Yin, looking at Zhuowen with a gloomy gaze. He continued, "Zhuowen, I already knew who you are. You don't have to pretend anymore." I'll remember the divine arrow you used, even if I turn into ashes. Gao Yanghong's eyes were full of mockery as he looked at Zhuowen from head to toe. You already recognized me when we were at the door of darkness? Zhuowen frowned. Gao Yanghong grinned, but didn't say anything. He looked at Zhuowen condescendingly as if he was looking at a dead man. But you are really quite powerful. You actually escaped from the hands of the second elder of the Phoenix people. You really surprised me. Senki Yin looked at Zhuowen and said sarcastically. Zhuowen could see the extremely dense killing intent in Senki Yin's eyes. Zhuowen's heart sank. Gao Yanghong and Senki Yin were really sinister. They had actually followed him all the way. Senki Yin was, after all, an expert at the early stage of the sky-piercing realm. Naturally, he had powerful concealment techniques to follow him without being discovered. Senki Yin and Gao Yanghong should have also witnessed the battle between him and the second elder of the Phoenix people. It had to be said that Senki Yin was very patient. After Zhuowen had shaken off the second elder of the Phoenix people, he still followed him closely and didn't show himself. Chapter 3060. Ghost Chain Kill Senki Yin saw that Zhuowen was silent and thought that Zhuowen was afraid. He smiled faintly and said, Zhuowen, I won't make things difficult for you. You broke into my 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect and stole my Yama's demon portrait. You also destroyed my underground secret chamber. Now, as long as you return the Yama's demon portrait and join my 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect, I can forget about your past grievances with the 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect. I will even focus on nurturing you. Gao Yanghong was shocked. He did not expect Senki Yin to want to recruit Zhuowen. However, when he thought of Zhuowen's heaven-defying strength, he felt that it was reasonable. Among the younger generation of the 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect, Ghost Plume was the strongest. However, Ghost Plume was much weaker than Zhuowen. Whether it was in terms of strength or temperament, they could not compare. It was reasonable for the sect leader to want to recruit this person as a disciple. Zhuowen, the sect leader, thinks highly of you. You'd better agree. It's a good thing for both you and me. Gao Yanghong also said. Zhuowen sneered in his heart and said, Yama's demon portrait? Sect leader's son must be joking. I've never even heard of this thing. Also, I, Zhuowen, like freedom. I don't like being restrained. I'm not interested in joining the 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect. As soon as he said this, Senki Yin and Gao Yanghong's faces darkened. They looked at Zhuowen with unfriendly expressions. Hee, you really don't know what's good for you. Zhuowen, you're already injured to this extent, but you're still so stubborn. It seems like you don't want to live anymore. Gao Yanghong said, and looked at Senki Yin as if he was asking for his opinion. Senki Yin nodded and said coldly, Yanghong, don't be too heavy-handed. Don't beat him to death. From Senki Yin's point of view, this Zhuowen's strength was indeed very strange. Back at the Door of Darkness, he was actually able to kill the leader of the Merman race, Sulong. However, he knew that the reason this child could kill Sulong was completely because of that Ho-E divine arrow. While he was tailing the kid, he saw with his own eyes that the kid's terrifying Ho-E divine arrow was taken away by the second elder of the Phoenix people. And now, Zhuowen had been injured by their sneak attack. So, in Senki Yin's opinion, Zhuowen wasn't much of a threat at all. Moreover, Gao Yanghong was also a half-step master of Heaven Ascension. Although he was not as strong as an early-stage master of Heaven Ascension, it was more than enough to deal with the heavily injured Zhuowen. Gao Yanghong nodded and took a step forward, rushing toward Zhuowen. A sinister smile appeared at the corners of his mouth, and the aura of a half-step master of Heaven Ascension was released without reservation. Zhuowen silently looked at Gao Yanghong, who was getting closer and closer. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Whoosh! You're about to die, but you're still smiling. I really admire your courage. Gao Yanghong couldn't help but feel a little angry when he saw Zhuowen actually smiling. He couldn't help but curse, but his attacks became even more ruthless and merciless. Bang! However, The moment Gao Yanghong's attack landed in front of Zhou, he discovered a strange black qi blocking in front of Zhou. Behind this strange black qi was a black jade scroll, and the black qi was surging out from this scroll. First layer of the Yama ghost diagram, open for me. Ghost chain kill. Zhou's figure was completely covered by the black qi, and it was impossible to see his face clearly. Only his faint voice rang out, and it was like a wail from the depths of hell, causing one's scalp to go numb. Gao Yanghong felt his scalp go numb. The fame of the Yama's ghost portrait was too great, and he had heard all kinds of shocking legends about it. Therefore, the moment he recognized the Yama ghost diagram, Gao Yanghong turned around and fled. How is this possible? How did this kid master the Yama ghost diagram so quickly? This is impossible. This was the only thought in Gao Yanghong's mind as he fled. Senki Yin looked at this scene in disbelief. This Zhou was actually using the Yama ghost diagram to attack Gao Yanghong. This Yama ghost diagram was accidentally obtained by Senki Yin, and it had been sealed in an underground secret chamber for tens of thousands of years. Over the past tens of thousands of years, Sun Qin had been constantly trying to refine the Yama demon diagram and master this infamous, transcending, heaven-grade, divine artifact. However, without exception, Senki Yin had failed. Originally, when the Yama ghost diagram was stolen by Zhou, Senki Yin was very angry, but he hadn't reached the point of madness. This was because Senki Yin knew that even if Zhou obtained the Yama ghost diagram, he wouldn't be able to refine it, let alone know how to use it. But now, the scene that Senki Yin saw was a slap to his face. Speaking of which, Zhou ability to refine the Yama ghost portrait was entirely due to luck. If the Yama ghost lord hadn't possessed him, Zhou would have found out that the Yama ghost lord wasn't the Yama ghost portrait's artifact spirit, but the remnant will of the Yama ghost lord. And if Zhou had destroyed the remnant will and obtained the Yama ghost lord's memories, Zhou wouldn't have been able to refine the Yama ghost portrait. The reason why Senki Yin hadn't been able to refine the Yama ghost diagram for tens of thousands of years was mainly because of the Yama ghost lord's remnant consciousness. The Yama ghost lord was very cunning. He knew that Senki Yin's cultivation was strong, and that his attempt to possess Senki Yin would definitely fail. Therefore, he pretended to be the artifact spirit of the Yama ghost diagram and misled Senki Yin for tens of thousands of years, causing Senki Yin's efforts to go to waste. Zhou's strength was so weak that the Yama ghost lord's remnant consciousness was immediately exposed and attacked Zhou. If Zhou's divine soul wasn't protected by the Panga banner, Zhou might have been successfully possessed by the Yama ghost lord. In the end, he suppressed the Yama ghost lord's remnant consciousness and learned the method to refine the Yama ghost diagram. There were 3 layers in the Yama ghost diagram, and each layer contained a terrifying killing move. Zhou had been studying the Yama ghost diagram for some time, so he naturally knew the method to open the first layer of the Yama ghost diagram. The first layer of the Yama ghost diagram was the ghost chain kill. Inside, there were countless strange ghost chains. Once these ghost chains appeared, they would bind the divine soul of a living being and cause the living being's divine soul to feel endless pain. In the end, the divine soul would be completely strangled by the ghost chains. A total of 9 ghost chains swept out from the black gas and instantly wrapped around Gao Yanghong. The moment the 9 ghost chains wrapped around Gao Yanghong's eyes widened and he let out a shrill scream, as if he was a prisoner who had been subjected to some extremely terrifying torture. Gao Yanghong covered his head and rolled on the ground as if he had gone crazy. Zhou took advantage of the moment when Gao Yanghong's divine soul was being tortured by the ghost chains and silently appeared in front of Gao Yanghong. His right index and middle fingers formed a sword and suddenly pointed at Gao Yanghong's forehead. A violent energy poured out and Gao Yanghong's divine soul was completely destroyed. Gao Yanghong's crazy actions came to an abrupt end. Pucci. Chapter 3061 that a battle between Soul Zhuin's face was pale, and his forehead was covered in sweat. There were even bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. This Yama ghost portrait is really a dangerous divine weapon. My soul actually has to endure such pain when I use the ghost chain strike. Zhuo-en muttered to himself as he looked at the Yama ghost portrait floating beside him. His eyes were filled with fear. This was his first time using the ghost chain strike on the first level of the Yama ghost portrait. Using 9 ghost chains was already his limit. What he did not expect was that his soul would also have to endure the impact of the ghost chain strike the moment he opened the ghost chain strike. Although the impact he had to endure was much weaker than Gao Yanhong's, the pain of his soul being stimulated was like countless golden needles piercing his nerves. That feeling was excruciating. Senki In, who was originally calm and composed, was stunned when he saw Gao Yanhong's soul being destroyed in an instant. His face was filled with disbelief. Although Zhuo-en's strength was indeed terrifying, Zhuo-en had relied on that strange divine arrow to achieve that. Now that the divine arrow had been taken away by the Phoenix people's second elder, he should not have any more trump cards on him. However, what Senki In did not expect was that Zhuo-en had actually mastered the Yama ghost portrait. He had had the Yama ghost portrait for tens of thousands of years. He knew very well that this Yama ghost portrait was not an ordinary divine weapon, but a top-tier divine weapon. If one could master this Yama ghost portrait, any cultivator would be like a tiger that had grown wings. However, Senki In quickly came back to his senses. He looked greedily at the Yama ghost portrait in Zhuo-en's hand. He knew that as long as he could completely take down this person, not only would the Yama ghost portrait be his, but he would also be able to obtain the method to use the Yama ghost portrait that he had not mastered for tens of thousands of years. The seed of greed continued to spread in Senki Yin's heart, causing him to almost lose his mind. Zhuo-en, very good. Today, even if you kneel in front of me and beg for mercy, I will not let you go. I will extract your soul and search it. Once I obtain the method to use the Yama demon diagram, I will place your soul in the divine flame and let you suffer the pain of being burned by the divine flame for eternity. Rumble. Before Senki In could finish speaking, he had already shot forward, and the powerful aura of an early master of heaven ascension was revealed. This aura was too terrifying. With Senki In as the center, an invisible domain spread out. Within this domain, there was an extremely strong pressure pressing down. Even Zhuo-en's movements slowed down slightly when he felt this pressure. However, he immediately unleashed his late-stage 6-star Pengu's sacred body. The pressure was immediately suppressed by Penga's aura. At the same time, Zhuo-en immediately retreated. You can't. Senki Yin's cold voice rang out. His speed suddenly increased, and he arrived in front of Zhuo-en in an instant. His right hand turned into a claw, and a strange and unfathomable black glow flashed between his fingers. Bang! Senki Yin's speed was extremely fast, and his claw came down. The strange black glow was like the sharpest blade in the world, as if it could cut through anything. Zhuo-en threw a punch, but it was pierced by the strange black glow, and it was smashed into a bloody mist. Boom! Zhuo-en's entire right arm exploded into a strange cloud of blood mist. The moment Senki Yin's right claw destroyed Zhuo-en's right arm, it immediately turned into a fist and smashed hard on Zhuo-en's chest. This punch was so powerful that it hit Zhuo-en's chest, and it sounded like a drum. Zhuo-en spat out a mouthful of blood, and he was free falling down in a straight line. Senki In clearly did not want to give Zhuo-en any chance to catch his breath. He pressed down with his knee, and his whole body was like a falling meteor, rapidly falling down. His target was Zhuo-en's forehead. If this knee attack landed, Zhuo-en's head would probably explode, and his soul might be destroyed. Zhuo-en frantically used the power of the Gomang Gu, and the terrifying injuries on his right arm and chest healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, Zhuo-en looked at the Yama's ghost portrait floating above his head, and a trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. Ghost chain kill. Zhuowen opened the first layer of the Yama's ghost portrait again and released the ghost chain kill. His soul once again felt like countless chains were tangled together, and he felt an unbearable pain. The Yama's ghost portrait emitted endless black fog, and a black gap appeared in the black fog. From the gap, black ghost chains shot out one after another. There were a total of 9 ghost chains, and they were like chains that came out of hell to judge sinners. Senki Yin's expression changed slightly. His feet kicked in the air, and his body changed directions at strange angles, trying to avoid the 9 ghost chains. He had seen with his own eyes that Zhuowen was tortured by the 9 ghost chains to the point where he wished he was dead. That was why Zhuowen's sneak attack succeeded, and his soul was destroyed and he died. Although he was much stronger than Gao Yanghong, he did not dare to casually come into contact with the 9 ghost chains, and he tried to avoid them as much as possible. Unfortunately, no matter how Senki Yin dodged, the 9 ghost chains seemed to have a mind of their own, and they chased after Senki Yin, and their speed became faster and faster. In the end, with Senki Yin as the center, the 9 ghost chains came from 9 directions at the same time, making it impossible for Senki Yin to dodge. He could only watch as the 9 ghost chains surrounded him. Senki Yin's hands formed a seal, and he took out 9 palm-sized black skeletons from his spirit ring. These 9 black skeletons were surrounded by black qi, and they revolved around Senki Yin and then rushed toward the 9 ghost chains. Unfortunately, the instant these 9 black skeletons came into contact with the ghost chains, it was as though they had met their natural enemy. The dark eyes of the skeletons actually revealed a dark glint of fear. Immediately, their hands and feet became chaotic as they began to flee in panic. The 9 ghost chains were like mighty and invincible divine dragons, and they rushed out, piercing through the 9 black skeletons, and then wrapped Senki Yin tightly. Senki Yin's eyes widened. He felt that his soul was being violently attacked by a terrifying power, and intense pain made his whole body tremble. His forehead, palms, and all over his body kept breaking out in cold sweat. Senki Yin finally experienced Gao Yanghong's pain. However, Senki Yin's soul was much stronger than Gao Yanghong's. Although his face was as ferocious as a demon's, he did not let out a single scream. Instead, he endured it and stared at Zhuowen, who was not far away. He found that Zhuowen's expression was not much better, and he was even in more pain than him. At this moment, Zhuowen was sitting on a meteorite, and the Yama's ghost picture was floating above his head. The 9 ghost chains were derived from the open scroll of the Yama's ghost picture. Zhuowen's whole body was trembling, and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. His veins were bulging, and his face was extremely ferocious. Chapter 3062. Xiao Hei's attack after being nourished by the Panga banner. Zhuowen's divine soul was indeed much stronger than that of many cultivators, but it didn't mean that his divine soul was comparable to that of an early-stage, sky-reaching master, like Senki Yin. To be honest, Zhuowen's cultivation base was only that of an eternal overlord. The difference between him and Senki Yin was like the difference between heaven and earth. To be able to restrain an expert like Senki Yin with his divine soul, Zhuowen was already very impressive. It seems that although the Yama ghost portrait is powerful, it also comes with a heavy price. Senki Yin was wrapped up like a dumpling by the 9 ghost chains. His divine soul was constantly being whipped, and it was extremely painful. Fortunately, he was a sky-reaching master, and his divine soul was much stronger than that of ordinary cultivators. Although it was painful, he could still endure it. However, Senki Yin also knew that if this continued, it wouldn't end. So he forcibly separated a wisp of his divine soul and took out a pitch-black divine sword from his spirit ring. There was a bright red blood groove in the center of the divine sword, extending from the hilt to the tip. This divine sword was Senki Yin's natal divine weapon, a half-step, sky-reaching divine weapon. After being nourished by Senki Yin's blood essence for countless years, It was infinitely close to becoming a sky-reaching divine weapon. Uft! Senki Een suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood essence. The pitch-black divine sword seemed to come to life, turning into a black light that shot toward Zhuowen's glabella. After using the pitch-black divine sword, Senki Yin's expression suddenly became much more dispirited, and his face was so pale that he didn't look like a normal person. Because a part of his divine soul had been separated, his divine soul was immediately injured by the silent ghost chains, and he grimaced in pain. Senki Een had paid a heavy price to use this sword, but he didn't regret it. He knew that this sword was enough to kill Zhuowen. As long as he could kill this kid and obtain the Yama ghost portrait, everything would be worth it. The pitch-black divine sword was extremely fast, and it arrived in front of Zhuowen in the blink of an eye. It actually ignored the strange black fog emanating from the Yama ghost diagram and directly pierced through it. "Xiaohei, come out!" Zhuowen suddenly bellowed, only to see 3 sword lights flashing around him, exploding above the pitch-black divine sword. Bang, bang, bang. 3 crisp sounds rang out in succession. The 3 beams of sword light were repelled, and the trajectory of the pitch-black sword deviated slightly. It pierced into Zhuowen's left shoulder and destroyed his left hand. Zhuowen smiled bitterly. If it were any other time, he would have been able to dodge. But now his divine soul was restrained by the Yama ghost portrait, and he couldn't divert his attention to control his current physical body. In fact, the Yama ghost portrait's ghost chain kill was a very abnormal skill. If Zhuowen and Senki Een were both experts at the initial stage of sky-reaching master, and their divine souls weren't so different, he could use the ghost chain kill to easily injure Senki Een, and even kill Senki Een. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's divine soul was a little weaker than Senki Yin's, so the backlash from the ghost chain kill was even more intense. Now he couldn't even divert his attention to move. The 3 sword lights were naturally the Thunderfire sword, Sacrificial Death sword, and Blood Immortal sword that had been hidden in the macro world. Ever since Xiaohei had obtained a lot of ores and materials, he had brought the Sacrificial Death sword and Blood Immortal sword into seclusion. They had only just come out of seclusion. Xiaohei had gained a lot from the seclusion. The Thunderfire sword that he controlled had advanced to the peak of the Genesis level, and the Sacrificial Death sword and Blood Immortal sword had reached the initial stage of the Genesis level. Holy *T. What kind of divine sword is this? It's so hard. I'm getting dizzy. Xiaohei was sent flying by the pitch-black divine sword. He had just stabilized himself in the void when he started to talk nonsense. "Xiaohei, stop that pitch-black divine sword. My divine soul is restrained by the Yama ghost portrait, and I can't control my body. I can only rely on you now." Zhuowen hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Xiaohei and briefly explained everything that had happened. Xiaohei's expression suddenly became much more serious. He looked at Senki Een, who was bound by the 9 ghost chains not far away, and said, "I didn't expect that old man to come personally to kill you. Looks like you've been exposed at the door of darkness. But that pitch-black divine sword is this old man's natal divine weapon. I estimate that it's at least a half step to the immortal ascension level. I'm only at the peak of the Genesis level. You want me to fight that pitch-black divine sword head-on? Aren't you tricking me?" Xiaohei immediately objected. "Don't worry. Senki Yin's divine soul is bound by the ghost chains, and it's constantly being weakened. His natal divine sword is also constantly consuming his divine soul. As long as you can stall his natal divine sword, that old man won't be able to hold on for long," Zhuowen said as he endured the pain. Xiaohei chuckled and said, "So that's how it is. That's easy. But if I can take down that old man, that black divine sword will belong to me. All right, as long as you can stall that black divine sword for me, I'll give it to you." Zhuowen nodded. He knew that Xiaohei possessed extremely powerful forging skills. He could refine other divine weapons and use them to upgrade his own divine weapons. This wasn't the first time that Xiaohei had done this. In the past, when Zhuowen and Xiao He had teamed up to kill enemies, this guy would always shamelessly take away all the high-grade divine weapons and refine them to upgrade himself. That divine sword is coming again. Hurry up and help me block it. The sound of something hurtling through the air suddenly rang out. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He saw that the pitch-black divine sword had immediately turned around under Senki Yin's divine sense after it had veered off course. It continued to stab toward Zhuowen's vitals. Bang! 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 Xiao He responded. He took the sacrificial death sword and blood immortal sword and turned into 3 rays of sword light. They formed a 3-way encirclement and entangled with the pitch-black divine sword. Within the 9 ghost chains, Senki Yin was shocked. He glanced at Zhuowen, who was sitting cross-legged. This guy's divine soul should have reached its limit. How can he still control 3 divine swords with other divine senses? No, these 3 divine swords aren't controlled by this guy. It's the Thunderfire divine sword that's controlling the other 2 divine swords. What kind of divine sword is this? It has a personality like a cultivator and can control other divine swords? Senki Yin quickly discovered something special. He could tell that it wasn't Zhuowen's divine sense that was controlling the 3 divine swords, but the divine sword that was surrounded by Thunderfire. This surprised him. He knew that most divine weapons had a corresponding weapon spirit, but the weapon spirit's intelligence was basically not too high. It was very simple, like a child. However, the weapon spirit of the Thunderfire divine sword could control other divine swords. It was almost no different from a real cultivator. Was this still a divine weapon? Chapter 3063. Damn it. As expected of a half-step immortal-grade artifact. It's so powerful that it's numbing me. Xiao He controlled the sacrificial death sword and blood fairy sword. They did not clash head-on with the black divine sword. Instead, they hovered around Zhuowen, preventing the black divine sword from attacking Zhuowen's vitals. However, what made Zhuowen speechless was that Xiao He only helped him block attacks that were aimed at his vitals in order to save energy. He completely ignored the attacks that were not aimed at his vitals. Therefore, as the number of attacks from the black divine sword increased, Zhuowen's external injuries also increased. Blood flowed from all over his body, making him look like a bloody man. Xiao He, F*CKU. Zhuowen held his breath and cursed. Xiao He circled around Zhuowen and said nonchalantly, "Your body is so strong anyway, and your self-healing ability is so insane. I won't help you block these minor injuries. Consider it a form of training for you." Zhuowen was speechless. Uft. Senki Yin spat out another mouthful of blood. His face was even paler, and his breathing was even weaker. He began to panic. With the Thunderfire sword, sacrificial death sword, and blood fairy sword protecting Zhuowen, his natal divine sword could not completely kill Zhuowen. Moreover, as he continued to use his divine will, his soul became weaker and weaker. He was beginning to be unable to withstand the attacks of the ghost chains. Damn it, if most of my soul wasn't restrained by the ghost chains, how could these 3 Genesis grade divine swords do anything to my natal divine sword? Senki Yin was unwilling to give up. His body began to dissipate, turning into wisps of black smoke. Senki Yin knew that if this continued, he would probably die here. If he did not leave now, he would not have another chance. Whoosh! In the end, Senki Yin dissipated into countless wisps of black smoke. They drifted with the wind as if they had disappeared into thin air. The moment Senki Yin dissipated into countless wisps of black smoke, the black divine sword buzzed and broke through the air, disappearing on the spot in an instant. Xiao He was stunned. He stared blankly in the direction where the black divine sword had broken through the air. Then he cursed, "Damn it, you're mine. Why did you run so fast?" Little Black chattered on for a long time, but this fellow didn't chase after it. The main reason was that this fellow was a coward. It knew that its level was lower than that pitch-black divine artifact. If it chased after it, it would only be beaten up. The 9 ghost chains all retracted into the Yama's demon's diagram, and then the Yama's Yama and turned into an ordinary ink-black scroll, which fell on Zhuowen's knees. Uft! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a ghost. He put away the Yama's demon's diagram and took out the space-time roulette. He said to Xiaohei, "Find a place to hide." After saying that, Zhuowen directly fainted. When Zhuowen slowly woke up, he found that he was surrounded by cold rock walls. He slowly sat up and immediately hugged his head. He only felt a splitting headache, and the pain made him grimace. I didn't expect the side effects of the Yama's demon chain strike to be so terrifying. If it weren't for my powerful soul, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to hold on until Senki In left. I would have fainted directly. Zhuowen shook his head, and a wry smile appeared on his face. "Kid, your Yama's demon's diagram is very impressive. This demon chain strike is a unique attack that directly attacks one's soul. If your soul is as powerful as Senki-in's with the demon chain strike, you can torture that old man Senki-in like a dog." The thunder fire sword floated in front of Zhuowen, and Xiaohei sat on the sword's hilt. She crossed her little paws and said calmly. Zhuowen nodded, but soon he found that something was different. He found that his 5 senses and reaction time were much sharper than before. "My soul has become stronger." Zhuowen realized something and couldn't help but mutter to himself. The 5 senses and reaction time were closely related to one soul. Since both of them had become stronger, it proved that his soul had also become stronger. Zhuowen felt a little incredulous. Everyone knew that it was very difficult for a cultivator's soul to become stronger, unless the cultivator had a breakthrough or swallowed a divine pill that could strengthen one's soul. Other than that, there was no other way to strengthen one's soul. However, after Zhuowen woke up from his coma, his soul had become much stronger. If his soul was comparable to a peak god of creation stage cultivator before, Zhuowen's soul had now undergone a transformation, and had already reached the level of an early stage god of creation stage cultivator. It should be because of the Panga banner that exists in your soul. You used the Yama's demon's diagram and exhausted too much of your soul. It even exceeded your limit. The Panga banner should have been constantly restoring your spirit while you were unconscious, and your spirit should have undergone a metamorphosis and evolution during this process. This is just like training your physical body. Once you reach your limit, your physical body will improve a lot next time and even undergo a transformation. The logic behind the two should be the same. Xiaohei glanced at Zhuowen and analyzed seriously. If the soul can really be trained like this, then can't other cultivators also use this method to strengthen their souls? Zhuowen asked in surprise. However, Xiaohei shook her head and sneered. Other cultivators are seeking death by training like this. The biggest difference between the soul and physical body is that it's too difficult to restore the soul. But physical body can be replenished through rest. You have the Panga banner. This thing can restore your soul and even strengthen it. However, others don't have the Panga banner and can only rely on divine pills that can restore the soul. And these divine pills are all priceless. Do you think there would be cultivators who would spend money like this just to train their souls? Hearing this, Zhuowen smiled bitterly and nodded. Speaking of which, the reason his soul could be so monstrous was because of the Panga banner. Without the Panga banner, his soul wouldn't have been able to recover so quickly. By the way, Xiaohei, how long have I been unconscious? Zhuowen asked. You've been unconscious for half a month. Xiaohei said, What? You've actually recovered for half a month? Zhuowen was shocked and immediately looked at Xiaohei. The latter spread her hands and said, If you ask me about the battle between the human race and the alien race, I definitely don't know. I've been looking after you all this time and didn't go out at all. Then where are we now? Zhuowen asked calmly. We're already close to the door of darkness. I think the news that you've obtained the inheritance of the ancestral shaman Gong Gong has already spread. I think no human or alien race will come to the door of darkness again, Xiao Hei said. Zhuowen nodded. Xiao Hei's decision was correct. The door of darkness had a powerful restriction. Cultivators above the master of creation realm couldn't enter. Chapter 3064. Position Zhuowen took out a communication jade talisman from his waist. He planned to send a message to Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing to ask how they were doing. He also wanted to know if the war between the human race and the alien race had ended. After sending the message, Zhuowen waited silently for a while before the communication jade talisman lit up. Zhuowen glanced at it and saw that it was Yao Xiangjuan's reply. In her reply, Yao Xiangjuan told Zhuowen not to worry about her and Jiang Qixing. They were doing well and had already returned to the space camp. As for the war between the human race and the alien race, it was said that it was very tragic. The human race and the alien race had suffered countless casualties. 2 of the 4 space camps of the human race had been conquered by the alien race. They were the eastern camp and the northern camp. Because both sides had suffered heavy losses, the 4 Tao masters of the human race, the war god of the sorcerer race, the Yangshi Union, and the Phoenix people's great elder Mu Yu had signed an agreement. For the next 1,000 years, the human race and the alien race were not allowed to start a large-scale war. If either side broke the agreement, they would be cursed by the heavenly Tao oath. Zhuowen looked at the message in the communication jade talisman. He could see the helplessness in Yao Xiangjuan's expression when she sent this message. The Star Wars battlefield was a natural barrier that separated the Xianmi heavenly domain and the primitive heavenly domain. It was also the last barrier between the Xianmi heavenly domain and the primitive heavenly domain. But now, half of the 4 space camps of the human race had been conquered by the alien race. This was an absolute humiliation for the human race. Speaking of which, Zhuowen did not have many feelings for the Xianmi heavenly domain. After all, he had only been in the Xianmi heavenly domain for a few hundred years. Moreover, he had been chased by the 10 extreme Yin Corp sect in the Xianmi heavenly domain and had been betrayed by the Pale Array Immortal Alliance to the Blood Prison. Therefore, Zhuowen did not have a good impression of the Xianmi heavenly domain, let alone a sense of belonging. However, although he did not have much of a sense of belonging to the Xianmi heavenly domain, he hated the unreasonable alien race even more. In the war between the human race and the alien race, he naturally stood on the side of the human race. He did not want the alien race to achieve any results. Now that the eastern and northern space camps had been invaded by the alien races, Zhuowen was very unhappy. However, Zhuowen also knew that no matter how unhappy he was, he couldn't change the current situation of the battle. After all, his strength wasn't even comparable to the early sky-reaching lord. In this battle between the human race and the foreign races, he was just a cannon fodder. It seems that the war between the human race and the alien race has come to an end. Kid, are you planning to return to the camp? Or are you? Xiao Hei looked at Zhuowen and hesitated. He already knew about Mu Qinxue. Given Zhuowen's personality, he was afraid that he would go to the Phoenix people of the primitive heaven realm. I plan to return to the Starry Sky camp first. My points should be enough for me to exchange for a heavenly level elixir in the Starry Sky Tower. Perhaps the Starry Sky Tower has the heavenly level elixir I need. Zhuowen said seriously. By the way, didn't you capture the saint of the Phoenix people? The saint has a high status in the primitive heaven realm. She should know the geography of the primitive heaven realm like the back of her hand. Since you haven't been to the primitive heaven realm, I think you can get some information from the saint about the geography of the primitive heaven realm. Xiao Hei suddenly said. Zhuowen nodded. With a thought, he brought Xiao Hei into the outside world. In the outside world, the sun, moon, and stars rotated. Sunrise and sunset alternated. Mountains, hills, grasslands, deserts, and various other landforms could be seen everywhere in the outside world. The outside world looked even bigger than many planets with life. It was even more vibrant and full of vitality. Zhuowen came to a valley filled with tulips. In the depths of the valley, there was a clear and huge lake. In the center of the lake, there was a rather large island. There was a rather luxurious villa on the island. Zhuowen glanced at the villa on the island, shook his head, and said, "It seems that Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxie really know how to enjoy life." Xiao Hei crossed her little paws in front of her chest, raised her chin, and said proudly, "I asked those two to build this villa on the island. It's for me to escape the heat." Zhuowen looked at Xiao Hei speechlessly. This guy was just a divine sword. He didn't feel like a human at all. Yet he was shamelessly boasting that he needed to escape the heat. He really had enough of this guy. Two figures flew out of the villa and landed in front of Zhuowen. They respectfully greeted him as master. These two were naturally Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxie. Zhuowen nodded and said, "How is the saint of the Phoenix people?" "The saint is inside. We have been guarding her all this time. We didn't dare to slack off in the slightest." Yin Wuxie and Ghost Plume carefully led Zhuowen into the villa on the island. In the secluded room, Zhuowen looked at the beautiful figure in front of him with her back facing him, and said indifferently, "How have you been recently, saint?" The saint turned around and glared at Zhuowen with resentment. "Thanks to you, my 99 Phoenix body bloodline has been extracted by you, and my cultivation is constantly declining. Now, my cultivation has been sealed by you, and I'm under house arrest here like a bird in a cage. Do you think I'm doing well? There are mountains and rivers here, and there are even people to serve you. The environment is also so secluded and elegant. How many people dream of a place like this? You're still not satisfied with all this?" Zhuowen casually sat on a wooden armchair and crossed his legs as he spoke frivolously. The saint looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "You don't visit a temple without a cause. You're here because you're being chased by Elder Hong. Now you have a request, right? As long as you return the bloodline of the 99 Phoenix body to me, kneel before me, swear loyalty to me, and become my dog, I can plead for leniency on your behalf in front of Elder Hong and spare your dog life." The saint was confident in her victory. The moment she escaped, she knew that Elder Hong would definitely chase after her. After all, she was the saint of the Phoenix people. She had a special position in the clan, and Elder Hong would not leave her behind. However, what made the saint a little anxious was that Elder Hong was only now looking for Zhuowen. That was why Zhuowen had come to ask her to plead for him. Slap. Unfortunately, after the saint finished speaking, she felt her cheeks burning. She fell directly to the ground and covered her face with her hands as she looked at the indifferent young man in front of her in disbelief. "Saint, you'd better restrain your arrogant attitude in front of me, because I hate this kind of attitude the most. Also, some of your guesses are correct. The Elder Hong you mentioned, who is also the second elder of the Phoenix clan, did try to kill me because of you. In order to escape from his pursuit, I gave up my most important trump card. That trump card is very precious. Your life is not as precious as mine. If I didn't have some questions to ask you, I would have killed you for what you said just now. Also, the next time you speak, you'd better be clear about your position. You're my captive now. If I want to kill you, it's just a thought. Don't think that I won't dare to kill you just because you're the saint of the Phoenix people." Chapter 3065. The Hunchbacked Man. Elder Hong tried to kill you? How did you manage to escape? The saintess forgot about the pain on her cheek as she stared at Zhuowen. She was well aware of Elder Hong's strength. Even in the primitive heaven realm, he was invincible among those of the same level. Back then, Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and Xiaojin, the three sky-piercing masters, had joined forces to fight Elder Hong. In the end, they were suppressed by Elder Hong. Recognize your current situation. Otherwise, I don't mind teaching you a lesson. Zhuowen's voice was filled with cold, killing intent. The saintess trembled when she saw the killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes. She finally realized that she was no longer the high and mighty saintess of the Phoenix clan. She was now just a captive of this young man from the human clan. "What do you want to ask?" The saintess forced herself to calm down and asked in a low voice. "I need a rough geographical map of the primitive heaven realm, a map of the route to the Phoenix people, and a method to enter the primitive heaven realm." Zhuowen said calmly. "You want to enter the primitive heaven realm?" The saintess looked up in surprise and sized up Zhuowen. She wondered if this young man's brain had been kicked by a donkey. A mere human actually wanted to enter the primitive heaven realm? That was simply courting death. But soon the saintess was overjoyed. She knew that if this human really wanted to enter the primitive heaven realm, it would definitely be beneficial for her. The sense of power of human beings was way too sensitive to non-humankind beings. Any human being who entered the prehistorical heavenly realm would become a rat on the street, chased by countless non-humankind beings in the prehistorical heavenly realm, and eventually die. As long as this human died in the primitive heaven realm, she would have a chance to escape from him and reclaim the bloodline of the 99 Phoenix body. This was an opportunity. The saintess lowered her head, and her eyes emitted a sharp light. "What's wrong? Is there a problem? Or do you not have what I want?" Zhuowen looked at the saintess, who suddenly lowered her head and couldn't help but sneer in his heart. He naturally knew what the saintess was thinking. However, he didn't mind. His clone wasn't a human, but a member of the devouring clan. After entering the great desolate heaven realm, as long as he did not reveal his true body and only revealed his avatar, he would not be like the other humans, who would be chased and beaten by everyone. "Yes, I have all of those that you mentioned." The holy maiden hurriedly took out a jade slip and a sheepskin scroll from her spiritual ring and handed them to Zhuowen. She said, "This jade slip records the geographical location of the primitive heavenly realm and the division of forces. The goatskin scroll contains the specific route to the Phoenix people. Also, I know a shortcut to enter the great desolate heaven realm. Even if you are a human, as long as you enter that shortcut, you will be able to enter the great desolate heaven realm smoothly." Zhuowen put away the jade slip and the goatskin scroll. After looking at them for a while, he found that they didn't look like replicas. He knew that the saintess had given him the real thing. "Thank you." Zhuowen put away the goatskin scroll and the jade slip and said indifferently, "When will you go to the great desolate heaven realm?" The saintess of the Phoenix people hurriedly asked after seeing Zhuowen put away the jade slip and the goatskin scroll. "What, do you really want me to go to the great desolate heaven realm?" Zhuowen looked at the saintess and said coldly, "Not really. I was just casually asking." The saintess turned her head, trying to cover it up. "When I want to go, I will let you lead the way." After saying that, Zhuowen left the room. After instructing Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia to look after the saintess, he left Xiao Hei in the outside world and left the outside world. After leaving the cave, Zhuowen found that this place was indeed the ruins near the Door of Darkness. Just as Xiao Hei had said, the area around the Door of Darkness was deserted. There was no one around. After leaving the Door of Darkness, Zhuowen rushed towards the outskirts of the dark ancient city. Along the way, he saw many corpses of humans and foreign races. However, he didn't see any living ones. The surviving humans and foreign races were probably negotiating and signing contracts at the Starry Sky Camp. After leaving the dark ancient city, Zhuowen directly rushed towards the Starry Sky Camp. After a while, Zhuowen quietly landed near the Starry Sky Tower. His arrival didn't attract too much attention. Before Zhuowen came to the Starry Sky Tower, he had changed his appearance again. This time, he was a middle-aged man with dark skin. In addition, he only had the aura of an eternal overlord, so no one paid attention to him. After all, during this period of time, there were other cultivators like Zhuowen who had returned from the outside world. At this moment, the atmosphere around the Starry Sky Tower was very solemn. The colorful restrictions that were originally set up around the Starry Sky Tower had all been removed. with the Starry Sky Tower as the center. Among the 4 Starry Sky camps, the Western and Southern Starry Sky camps' restrictions were somewhat damaged. However, they were still intact. The buildings in the camps were also neatly erected. The human cultivators were all standing in these 2 camps. As for the Eastern and Northern Starry Sky camps, the surface restrictions on the Eastern and Northern Starry Sky camps were completely broken. Most of the buildings inside were in ruins. The ground was cracked and countless corpses were piled up. The Eastern and Northern Starry Sky camps were very large. However, there were only human corpses inside. There were no human cultivators standing. Instead, there were all kinds of foreign races of all shapes and sizes. It seems that the information that junior sister Yao sent me was correct. The Eastern and Northern Starry Sky camps have really been taken over by the foreign races. It seems that both sides are about to sign an agreement. After Zhuowen landed on the Starry Sky Tower, he looked around and couldn't help but frown as he thought to himself. Zhuowen wasn't very interested in the agreement between the human race and the foreign races. What he was most interested in now was whether he could exchange for the heaven-piercing divine herbs in the Starry Sky Tower with the Starry Sky token that he now had 1,000,000 points. Thinking of this, Zhuowen walked towards the Starry Sky Tower. The Starry Sky Tower square was packed with people. However, when Zhuowen entered the Starry Sky Tower, he found that there was basically no one inside. There were many counters in the Starry Sky Tower. On the counters, there were huge banners with a lot of information on them. Most of them were mission information. As long as one completed the missions on the banners, they would be able to obtain the corresponding points. Of course, the points rewarded for completing missions were far less than killing foreign races. However, completing missions was much safer than killing foreign races. Many human cultivators liked to complete missions to obtain points. At this moment, there were basically no managers at the counters in the Starry Sky Tower. They should have gone to the square to watch the agreement between the human race and the foreign races. I say, brother, what are you doing here? Our human race and the foreign races are about to sign an unfair agreement. This is a disgrace to our human race. Everyone else has gone out to watch. Why are you still in the Starry Sky Tower? Chapter 3066. 1,000 years without flowers, you are? Zhuowen asked. I'm just a gatekeeper, the gatekeeper of the entrance to the upper levels of the Tower of Stars. The hunchbacked man was quite enthusiastic as he chuckled at Zhuowen and continued. Today is an important day. I don't think anyone will use their points to exchange for things in the Tower of Stars, so I'm planning to close the entrance and go out to take a look. You have to go to the upper levels of the tower to exchange for things in the Tower of Stars. Zhuowen looked at the closed entrance behind the hunchbacked man and asked in surprise. The hunchbacked man looked at Zhuowen strangely, as if he was looking at an alien, and said, I say, brother, have you never exchanged anything in the Tower of Stars before? Zhuowen said embarrassedly, I just got the Universal Star token not long ago and went out not long ago. I had some gains and just came back, so I want to exchange for something. The hunchbacked man looked at Zhuowen speechlessly and said, I say, brother, you just got the Universal Star token not long ago, so you shouldn't have many points, right? You have to know that the lowest level of the Tower of Stars costs at least 1,000 points. Otherwise, you won't even have the qualifications to enter the entrance. You can come back to exchange after you have accumulated more points. Let's go out and see how the negotiations are going. The hunchbacked man couldn't wait to go out and see how the negotiations between the human race and the foreign race were going. Zhuowen hurriedly pulled the hunchbacked man and said, Brother, I already have more than 1,000 points. I have something very important that I want to exchange for now. Zhuowen was in such a hurry to exchange for points mainly because he felt that it wasn't safe to be near the Tower of Stars, and he had many enemies here. He was afraid that the longer he stayed in the Tower of Stars, the greater the chances of him being exposed. So he wanted to exchange for the heaven-level divine medicine as soon as possible and leave as soon as possible. The hunchbacked man looked at Zhuowen with some annoyance. He took out a key from his bosom and handed it to Zhuowen. I'm in a hurry to see the negotiations. This is the key to the entrance. Open the door yourself. But remember to return the key to me after you're done." After he finished speaking, the hunchbacked man threw a jade slip to Zhuowen and said that this jade slip contained information about the things to take note of when exchanging in the Starry Sky Tower. Then he hurriedly left the Starry Sky Tower. Zhuowen couldn't help but shake his head as he watched the hunchbacked man leave. After that, his divine sense extended into the jade slip and roughly looked through its contents. The jade strip indeed contained information about the upper levels of the Starry Sky Tower. The Starry Sky Tower had a total of 9 floors. Each floor corresponded to an item of a corresponding level. For example, on the first floor, one could exchange for an item of the first step of Tao validation, the first realm of heavenly Tao. The minimum requirement to enter was 1,000 points. The minimum required points to exchange for primordial Tao items on the second level was 5,000 points. On the 7th, 8th, and 9th levels, one could exchange for creation grade, and heaven grade items, respectively. However, the requirements for these 3 levels were also extremely high. The 7th level required at least 200,000 points, while the 8th level required 500,000 points. The most terrifying one should be the 9th level, which required 1,000,000 points to enter. Even Zhongli Haoyan, who was ranked first on the Starry Sky contribution list, could only enter the 7th level of the Starry Sky Tower. She didn't even have the qualifications to enter the 8th level. After gaining a general understanding of the Starry Sky Tower's exchange system, Zhuowen took out the key and opened the door to the upper levels of the Starry Sky Tower. He stepped in while holding his Starry Sky token in his hand. The series of numbers on the Starry Sky token was even more breathtaking. Zhuowen followed the steps behind the door and walked straight up, passing through one level after another. He found that every level had a powerful barrier that prevented him from entering the next level. However, the numbers on Zhuowen's Starry Sky token were too dazzling. The moment he approached these barriers, Zhuowen basically didn't encounter any obstacles. In other words, in front of him, these barriers were like nothing. After all, he had the qualifications to enter the 9th level. In the end, Zhuowen arrived at the 9th level. He passed through the barrier of the 9th level's entrance and smoothly entered the interior of the 9th level. The interior of the 9th level wasn't very spacious. The surrounding walls were a little dilapidated and were gray in color. It was as if the surrounding walls were piled up with gray stone bricks. Above his head was a semicircular dome. The surface of the dome should be a painting. However, this painting was badly damaged. Zhuowen could only vaguely see that this painting was of a man. In front of the man was a black mass. He didn't know what species they were. Zhuowen felt that the black mass was more like a foreign race army. However, because the painting was too badly damaged, he couldn't tell if it was a foreign race army or not. In the end, Zhuowen's gaze landed on the center of the space. There was a sparkling and translucent crystal pillar standing there. The surface of this pillar was flowing with blue light spots. It had a mysterious beauty to it. This should be the exchange center. Zhuowen's gaze turned serious. He had seen the jade slip that the hunchbacked man gave him and knew that every level had an exchange center. In order to exchange for the items inside, he had to place his Starry Sky token in the corresponding position of the exchange center. He saw a groove at the bottom left of the crystal pillar. The groove was about the same size as the Starry Sky token. Zhuowen placed the Starry Sky token in the groove. Instantly, the flowing blue light spots on the crystal pillar converged into a blue light ray and entered between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Zhuowen closed his eyes. A large amount of information appeared in his mind. These information were all related to the heaven grade items on the 9th level. These information were divided into divine equipment, talisman, array, divine medicine, and so on. Zhuowen chose the divine medicine category. He realized that there were only 3 types of divine medicine. These 3 types of divine medicine were all heaven grade divine medicine. These three types of divine medicine were the 6-een soul, gathering bamboo, the 1,000-year flowerless eyes, and the heavenly one green lotus. They were all heaven-grade divine medicine. The 1,000-year flowerless eyes was the heaven-grade divine medicine that Zhuowen needed. It was also one of the 6 ingredients needed to concoct the 6 desires spirit condensation Saint pill. It actually requires 1,050,000 points. Luckily, I only have so many points on me. Zhuowen looked at the points required to exchange for the 1,000-year flowerless eyes and couldn't help but smile bitterly. The heaven-grade divine medicine was indeed extremely expensive. In order to obtain 1,000,000 points, he had risked his life. Now he had spent all of them. What made him speechless was that the other 2 heaven-grade divine medicines were even more expensive than the 1,000-year flowerless eyes. This meant that if he were to exchange for those 2 divine medicines, he probably wouldn't have enough points. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He saw a drawer under the crystal pillar in front of him. In the drawer there was a black jade box. Chapter 3067. Privilege. After keeping the jade box, Zhuowen took out the starry sky token from the groove at the bottom of the crystal pillar. What surprised Zhuowen was that his starry sky token had changed. His starry sky token was originally jade-colored, but now it had turned into the color of the starry sky. It was as if the starry sky was the background, dotted with countless stars. It looked rather resplendent and gorgeous. Zhuowen picked up the starry sky token and scrutinized it carefully. He realized that other than the color of the starry sky token changing, the numbers on the front of the starry sky token had completely disappeared. It looked as if it had just been made and nothing was carved on it yet. Could it be that the starry sky token will change greatly after the exchange? Zhuowen was puzzled. In the jade slip that the hunchbacked man gave him, he didn't see any description of the starry sky token changing. Congratulations, my dear Longwen. You are the first cultivator to have accumulated 1,000,000 points since the establishment of the Starry Sky Tower. As the first in history, you have certain privileges. Suddenly, an elegant voice resounded in the space. Zhuowen jumped up in fright and rushed to the entrance of the 9th level. He looked around the 9th level cautiously. The voice appeared too abruptly. Zhuowen couldn't even tell where the voice came from. My dear Longwen, don't be afraid. I'm in your hands. You're too nervous. You're hurting me. The elegant voice was slightly stiff. It was then that Zhuowen realized that the voice came from the starry sky token in his hands. At this moment, the starry sky token left Zhuowen's hands and floated in front of him. The surface of the starry sky token had the texture of a starry sky. You are? Zhuowen frowned and asked. I am the pagoda's spirit of this starry sky tower. When the starry sky tower was first built, I already existed. The voice continued. I see. What are the privileges that you mentioned? Zhuowen asked curiously. This privilege allows you to use the power of the starry sky tower once. The voice continued to linger in Zhuowen's ears. Zhuowen carefully looked at the starry sky token floating in front of him and said in a somewhat speechless manner, What benefits can I get from using the starry sky tower's energy? I don't think I need it. The voice suddenly fell silent, and after a long time it seemed to gnash its teeth and said, Don't you know anything about the starry sky tower? Do you know how precious this privilege is? Zhuowen smiled innocently and shrugged. I just came to the Star Wars battlefield not long ago, so I really haven't heard about the Star Tower. The voice fell silent once more before it said, helplessly, I'll explain it to you simply. The Starry Sky Tower contains many heaven-piercing spirit arrays and restrictions. The energy contained within them is so terrifying that it's enough to annihilate a quarter of the Xianmi heavenly domain. Tell me, is there no benefit for you to have the privilege of using the Starry Sky Tower's energy? Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He didn't expect the energy contained within the Starry Sky Tower to be so terrifying that it could annihilate a quarter of the Xianmi heavenly domain. It should be known that the Xianmi heavenly domain was not one of the small heavenly domains in the 8 major heavenly domains. It was a truly vast and incomparably huge heavenly domain. It was vast and had countless planes and worlds. There were countless living beings, almost innumerable. Just the host region alone had 5 Tao Palace level forces, and the leaders of these 5 Tao Palace level forces were all early stage heaven-piercing masters. This was just the host region. The Xianmi heavenly domain still had 3 other major heavenly domains. In other words, if the Starry Sky Tower's energy erupted, it could annihilate the entire eastern Tao domain. How powerful would the energy be to achieve this? You said that I have the privilege of using the Starry Sky Tower's energy. What should I do to use it? Zhuowen was a little excited and couldn't help but ask. It's very simple. If you need it, just say, I need you to the Starry Sky token in your hand. I will hear your call and allow you to use the Starry Sky Tower's energy once. That's right. You can only use it near the Starry Sky Tower. If you leave the range of the Starry Sky Tower, it won't work even if you shout, I need you. The voice stopped abruptly at this point. Zhuowen was speechless. He actually needed to say, I need you to use this privilege. It was such a Chinibu slogan. However, it was a blessing to have such a privilege. At least Zhuowen knew that his safety was guaranteed when he was near the Starry Sky Tower. After all, the voice had said that the energy within the Starry Sky Tower had the terrifying power to annihilate a quarter of the Xianmi heavenly domain. Zhuowen took another deep look at the space of the 9th floor before leaving the entrance and walking down the stairs. Now that he had no more points in his Starry Sky token, he couldn't enter any of the exchange centers on the Starry Sky Tower. Naturally, he had to go down. After leaving the Starry Sky Tower, Zhuowen quickly found the hunchbacked man. The hunchbacked man was standing on a square not far from the Starry Sky Tower. He was staring straight ahead as if he was looking at a mortal enemy. Zhuowen came to the hunchbacked man's side and greeted him. After returning the key to him, his gaze followed the hunchbacked man's line of sight and landed in the direction of the eastern camp. In the eastern camp, the Yongtung Union and Muyu were leading a group of foreign race elites towards the Starry Sky Tower. In the northern and western parts of the Starry Sky Tower, the 4 Tao Lords were also slowly walking over, surrounded by human race cultivators. Among the 4 Tao Lords, the eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua, was severely injured. His footsteps were a little weak and he was being supported by others. Originally, the other Tao Lords wanted Tan Xinghua to go back and recuperate. However, Tan Xinghua insisted on coming over to sign the agreement with the foreign race. The other human cultivators behind him sighed in their hearts when they saw Tan Xinghua's miserable state. The reason Tan Xinghua was severely injured was mainly because the war god of the sorcerer tribe, the Yongtung Union, was too terrifying. Although the Yongtung Union and Tan Xinghua were both at the middle stage of the heaven-connecting realm, the Yongtung Union was already at the peak of the middle stage of the heaven-connecting realm. His battle strength was almost unmatched in the eldritch heaven domain. Tan Xinghua only managed to hold on for 100 rounds under the Yongtung Union's attacks. He was almost beaten to death. If Tan Xinghua didn't have a life-saving trump card, he would have died in the hands of the Yongtung Union. After Tan Xinghua was severely injured, the eastern camp didn't hold on for long before it was taken over by the Yongtung Union. Then, the Yongtung Union attacked again and helped the other foreign races to take over the northern camp. Chapter 3068. Negotiation. Originally, the foreign races didn't intend to negotiate with the human race. However, they didn't continue to attack because they feared the power of the Starry Sky Tower. The Starry Sky Tower was the foundation of the human race in the Starry Sky battlefield. Generations of heaven-reaching masters had spent countless years to build it. It was the treasure of the human race. The energy contained within the Starry Sky Tower was extremely shocking. Once the human race went all out and used the Starry Sky Tower, the invading foreign races would all die. However, the human race didn't dare to do so unless they had no other choice. This was because the energy of the Starry Sky Tower could only be used once. After that, the Starry Sky Tower would be completely destroyed, and the human race would lose their foundation and final protection in the Starry Sky battlefield. Both the human race and the foreign races knew how powerful the Starry Sky Tower was, so they didn't dare to fight to the death. This was especially true for the foreign races. They had already taken down 2 of the human race's space camps, which was already a huge gain. This was because the foreign races could use the eastern and northern space camps to continuously invade Xianmi heavenly regions, North Dao region, and Host region. A huge round table had been prepared under the Starry Sky Tower. There were 4 seats on both sides of the round table. The 4 Dao masters sat on one side of the round table. The Yangjiao, Muyu, and the leaders of the other 2 races sat on the other side. The 8 of them sat facing each other. 4 Dao masters. Signing this agreement is the wisest decision you've made in all these years. I should applaud you. After the Yangjiao sat down, he laughed loudly and clapped his hands. His voice was very arrogant and loud. The human cultivators around the Starry Sky Tower all glared at the Yangjiao. This fellow was too arrogant. Muyu sat beside the Yangjiao with a smile on her face. She flicked her finger and took out a golden scroll. She said, "This is the specific agreement. For Dao masters, take a good look." The 4 Dao masters took the scroll and glanced at it. Their faces instantly turned gloomy. The Eastern Dao master, Tan Xinghua, slammed the table and said, "Aren't you going too far? We agreed to give up the 2 space camps, but we didn't allow you to use the passage to Xianmi heavenly region. We've decided to seal that passage. You foreign races can only move about in the space camps." The other 3 Dao lords were also glaring at Muyu and the Yangjiao Union coldly. The smile on Muyu's face did not change, but her eyes were cold as she said, "These 2 space camps were conquered by us, so they are our territory. If you didn't beg for mercy, we wouldn't only have 2 space camps, but 4. The 4 Dao lords fell silent. Speaking of which, they were indeed the ones who had proposed a ceasefire. In any case, I won't agree to it. At worst, we'll activate all the energy in the Starry Sky Tower and raise everything here to the ground. We'll all die together." Tan Xinghua was clearly very agitated. He stood up and coldly looked at Muyu and the sheep-tongue combination. Muyu furrowed her brows and was about to retort when the sheep-tongue harmony stopped her and said with a smile, "Actually, we are not unreasonable people. I can consider your conditions. But before we sign the agreement, I have a small request. As long as you can fulfill this small request of mine, I will be happy to consider your proposal." Tan Xinghua calmed down and returned to his seat. The other 3 Dao lords revealed hopeful gazes as well. Tan Xinghua asked, "What is it?" The sheep-tongue harmony suddenly raised his hand and pointed at the enormous universal contribution ranking on the plaza before the Starry Sky Tower. He said, "Your universal contribution ranking has someone called Longwen, right? I want this young man from the human race. As long as you give me the Longwen, I can agree to your conditions of sealing off the passageways between the 2 space camps." The 4 Dao lords frowned when they heard the sheep-tongue harmony's words, and the humans behind them were in an uproar. The expressions of Jiang Qixing, Yao Xiangjuan, Zhongli Haoyan, and the others who had come into contact with Zhuowen changed drastically. They were truly quite curious. Why did the sheep-tongue harmony ask for the Longwen by name? According to their knowledge, the sheep-tongue harmony had never seen the Longwen at all. The 4 Dao lords were puzzled as well, but they were hesitant at the same time. They had never seen the Longwen before, but they had a deep impression of it. This was because the Longwen's points had skyrocketed by 1,000,000 in an instant, and it had caused quite a stir in the human race's team. The four Tao Lords suspected that Long Wen might have killed a heaven-reaching master of the alien race, and they knew that he was a once-in-a-lifetime genius of the human race. If they had the chance, they planned to meet Long Wen and give some guidance to such a genius junior. However, they hadn't expected that the Sheep Tongue Harmony would request the Long Wen before signing the agreement. Zhuowen, who was standing beside the hunchbacked man on the plaza, narrowed his eyes and glanced coldly at the Sheep Tongue Harmony. He knew that the Sheep Tongue Harmony was looking for him mainly because they wanted the inheritance of ancestor shaman Gonggong. Speaking of which, the shaman tribe was a direct descendant of the ancestor shaman, and they cared more about the ancestor shaman's corpse than anyone else. Zhuowen wasn't surprised that the Sheep Tongue Harmony had come looking for him. However, he found it strange that the shaman tribe hadn't been seen among the alien races when the news of ancestor shaman Gonggong's corpse had spread in the dark ancient city. Could it be that the shaman tribe thought that the news was fake, so they didn't send anyone? Now that the news had been confirmed and had been obtained by him, Zhuowen, they proposed a condition to capture him. Zhuowen? Zhuowen's guess was right. The shaman tribe had always believed in the prophecy of the tribe's priests that the ancestor shaman's corpse would only appear in the primitive, heavenly domain, so they subconsciously thought that the news of the ancestor shaman's corpse in the dark ancient city was fake. However, they had miscalculated this time. Taking down Zhuowen was actually a remedy for the Yang-tongued harmony. Of course, Zhuowen also knew that the Sheep Tongue Harmony had the intention of the Phoenix people to capture him. After all, the Phoenix people Saintess was still in his hands, and the Phoenix people couldn't ignore this matter. That Long Wen didn't offend you, right? Why do you want him? Tan Xinghua asked with a gloomy face. The Sheep Tongue Harmony smiled, as if they had already known that Tan Xinghua would ask this question. They pointed to Muyu beside them and said, "This is the Grand Elder of the Phoenix people. I think you all know her. The reason why I have this request is that Long Wen has gone too far and kidnapped the Phoenix people Saintess. It was the Grand Elder who asked me to make this request. That Long Wen is merely a human. I believe that the four Tao Lords will satisfy such a small request of mine." The Yang-tongued combination smiled faintly, appearing very gentlemanly, and his smile even carried a trace of ridicule. Chapter 3069. Exposed. Oh, Tao Master Tan, are you sure that Long Wen is that important compared to the safety of the cultivators in your Xianmi heavenly region? He's just a junior. As long as you hand him over, we're willing to let the human race seal off the passage between the eastern and northern camps. The Yang-tongued combination said indifferently, "This is already the biggest compromise that our foreign race can make. Can't you even hand over one person?" Muyu, who was sitting beside the Yang-tongued combination, sneered. Tan Xinghua was so angry that he wanted to slam the table again, but he was stopped by the Western Tao Master, LV Yeliang. "Old Tan, we have to discuss this properly. After all, Long Wen is a stranger that we've never seen before. Although he suddenly rose to the top of the universal contribution ranking, he's really insignificant compared to the cultivators in our Xianmi heavenly region. You should consider this from the standpoint of the majority." LV Yeliang transmitted his voice to Tan Xinghua. "Yes, old Tan, calm down. We're negotiating with the foreign race now. It's not the time to be impulsive." The Northern Tao Master, Yao Jianhua, also transmitted his voice. Tan Xinghua's eyes flickered. He sat down and finally calmed down. The four Tao Masters began to discuss something in low voices. Their voices were very soft, and the many humans standing around and observing basically couldn't hear what the four Tao Masters were discussing. Zhuowen, who was standing beside the hunchbacked man, had an ugly expression on his face. When Tan Xinghua was stopped by LV Yeliang, he had already guessed that the four Tao Masters were prepared to compromise and agree to the Yang-tongued combination's request. After all, Long Wen, who he was disguised as, had no sense of existence before. He had no relationship with the four Tao Masters and had never even met them. He didn't think that the four Tao Masters would sacrifice the interests of the human race for a genius that they hadn't even met before. In fact, it was the wisest choice for Zhuowen to leave the Starry Sky Tower now. However, Zhuowen also knew that it was the most dangerous time for him to leave the Starry Sky Tower. At this crucial moment, all the humans were paying attention to the signing of the agreement between the two races. However, he left the Starry Sky Tower alone. It was too sudden. As long as one wasn't stupid, one would suspect that there was something wrong with him. With a soft sigh, Zhuowen could only continue to stand where he was and hope that no one could see through his disguise. Sigh. It seems that Longwen is going to be sold. However, Longwen is too arrogant. He actually captured the saintess of the Phoenix people. Isn't he just asking for trouble? The hunchbacked man shook his head and sighed. Then he looked at Zhuowen and said, "Brother, which floor of the Star Tower did you enter to exchange for something? The things in this Starry Sky Pagoda should be pretty good. I don't have a lot of points, so I can only enter the first floor. However, the things inside are indeed top-notch. It really opened my eyes. It's a pity that I don't have enough points. If I did, I would really want exchange for everything inside." Zhuowen gave a thumbs up. The hunchbacked man grinned and said, "Of course." Everything produced by the Starry Sky Tower was of high quality. The truly good things were on the 9th floor. Unfortunately, no one has ever had the qualifications to enter the 9th level. Oh, I'm wrong. There's one person now, and that's the current number 1 on the Universal Contribution list, Longwen. It's a pity that this guy offended a foreign tribe and is now in a precarious situation. Otherwise, this guy's future would be boundless. At this point, the hunchbacked man shook his head. Zhuowen could clearly see the resentment and dissatisfaction in this man's eyes. It seemed that this guy still had some sense of justice. It said that there are good things on the 9th floor. Brother, do you know what other things there are on the 9th floor besides the transcending heaven grade items? Zhuowen pretended to be curious and asked, "Oh, apart from the transcending heaven grade items, I heard from the previous generation's gatekeeper that the guy who can enter the 9th floor is an extremely amazing person and will be recognized by the Starry Sky Pagoda. However, this is just a rumor. It can't be trusted," the hunchbacked man said. Zhuowen nodded. Just as he was about to continue speaking, the 4 Tao masters at the round table in front of them had finished their discussion. The one who spoke this time was the Northern Tao master, Yao Jianyuan. Yao Jianyuan's gaze was solemn. He looked at the Yang tongue combination and said, "We agree to your request. However, there's a problem. We haven't seen Longwen, so we can't hand him over right now." The Yang-tongued combination smiled and said, "There's no need for the 4 Tao masters to worry about this. Mu Yu is the grand elder of the Phoenix people. Since Longwen is so daring as to capture the Phoenix people saintess, Mu Yu's bloodline resonates with the saintess bloodline. If Longwen is within the range of your Starry Sky Pagoda, then I think Mu Yu will be able to find him. At that time, no one from the human race will stop us from capturing Longwen." The 4 Tao masters looked at Mu Yu in surprise. After hesitating for a moment, they all nodded. Since the 4 Tao masters have agreed, Grand Elder, it's up to you now. The Yang tongue combination and the other leaders of the foreign tribes stood up. After shaking hands with the 4 Tao masters, they smiled and looked at Mu Yu. "Leave this to me. As long as the saintess is hidden in Longwen's storage world, I'll be able to sense it through her bloodline." Mu Yu nodded and closed her beautiful eyes. Her slender hands were in front of her chest as she made hand seals and gestured. A blood-colored magic array appeared above Mu Yu's head. This magic array was formed by fresh blood. The blood was very strange. It was actually burning and boiling like flames. It was very strange. Zhuowen, who was standing beside the hunchbacked man, couldn't help but narrow his eyes. This was because the instant the blood-colored magic array appeared, he noticed that the saintess, who was imprisoned in the outside world, was acting strangely. In the outside world, the small residence on the island suddenly exploded. Waves of blood-colored energy soared into the sky. In Wuxia and Ghost Plume both spat out mouthfuls of blood and were sent flying out of the small residence. They fell into the lake and looked at the beautiful figure standing on the island with shock. Her entire body was wrapped in blood energy. They were cultivating outside the house when it suddenly exploded. The aftermath of the explosion pushed them away, and the saintess who was inside the house became like this. The crisp cry of a phoenix resounded. This sound was crisp and pleasant to the ear. It seemed to penetrate everything. It passed through the lake, spread to the mountains, transcended the outside world, and directly reached the starry sky tower. The hunchbacked man was immediately frightened by this crisp phoenix cry and retreated. He looked at the figure in front of him in shock. This figure was talking and laughing with him just a moment ago. What's going on? The hunchbacked man clearly didn't understand the situation. All the cultivators around the square retreated far away from the ear-piercing phoenix cry. It was as if this person was a plague. The phoenix cry became louder and louder. The sound was louder and louder, as if it would never stop. Chapter 3070. Tit for tat. Zhuowen stood quietly on the spot as the clear and melodious cry of a phoenix continuously sounded from Zhuowen's side. It was as if there was a living phoenix hidden in Zhuowen's body. Mu Yu slowly lowered her slender hands as her beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen. Her expression was terrifyingly cold. You're Long One, right? The yang-tongued harmony asked indifferently as he stared at Zhuowen with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. The 4 Tao masters stood up and their gazes also fell on Zhuowen. However, the 4 of them had collectively become mute. After agreeing to the yang-tongued harmony's request to hand over Longwen, they had already stood on the opposite side of Longwen. Now, Longwen was actually still hiding around the Starry Sky Pagoda and had personally witnessed them using him as a bargaining chip to be sold to the foreign races. They also knew that the 4 Tao Masters had indirectly fallen out with Longwen. Zhuowen sighed softly in his heart. It seemed that he had still underestimated the Phoenix people. He had originally thought that hiding the Phoenix people's Holy Maiden in the outside world would be a flawless plan. Now, it seemed that the Holy Maiden had become a moving tracker that exposed him. His divine sense entered the outside world and saw that the Holy Maiden had fainted after letting out the clear and melodious cry of a phoenix. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia were dutifully guarding the unconscious Holy Maiden. The yang-tongued harmony was slightly displeased when he saw that Zhuowen was silent. Didn't you hear what I said? Zhuowen slowly raised his head and first glanced at the 4 Tao Masters. The 4 Tao Lords instinctively moved their gazes away when they met Zhuowen's gaze. Zhuowen's gaze shifted slightly and fell on the yang-tongued harmony as he slowly said, "Yes, I am Longwen." Zhuowen knew that his identity had already been revealed, so there was no need to hide it anymore. Zhuowen's admission caused an uproar among the crowd. Among them, Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing's expressions changed drastically. Just as they were about to stand up, they were pulled back by the experts of their respective forces. And Xiao Jin put his right hand on Yao Xiangjuan's shoulder and said in a deep voice, "Xiangjuan, don't be impulsive. It's useless even if you go there. Longwen has offended 2 powerful non-humankind beings, Yangjin Union and Muyu. That means he has become the enemy of the entire non-humankind army. It's useless for you to go there. You'll even implicate our Yin and Yang divine sect." Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes dimmed, and Xiao Jin was right. She was like an ant compared to the Yangshi harmony and Muyu. Even if she rushed out, she would only be a useless cannon fodder. The situation on Jiang Qixing's side was the same. The masters of Chasing Sun Temple also knew that Jiang Qixing had a friendship with Longwen, so they stopped the impulsive Jiang Qixing in advance. Haha, as expected of the number 1 genius on the universal contribution list. I like your courage. Mu Yu chuckled, but her beautiful eyes emitted a cold light. She continued, "If you hand over the Saintess now, then kowtow and apologize to the Saintess in front of us. Then come with us. Perhaps you can keep your life. Zhuowen smiled faintly, but he didn't look at Muyu at all. Instead, he looked around at the many humans who had remained silent. Finally, he looked at the 4 Tao Masters and said indifferently, "Do the 4 Tao Masters really intend to sell me to the non-human kind, and then wag your tails and fawn over them? Do you think that as long as you act like a docile hunting dog and wag your tails to the non-human kind will soften their hearts and let you go? I don't think so. The non-human kind will become greedier and greedier. After this, the non-human kind will think of ways to attack the other 2 camps. After the 4 camps are attacked and occupied, you won't even have the chance to use the universal pagoda to sacrifice yourselves. Then the Xianmi heavenly region will be slowly nibbled away and invaded by the non-human kind." At this point, Zhuowen's voice became a little louder, and he continued, "Now that the non-human kind has attacked you, don't you have any thoughts of resisting at all? Instead, you'd rather be a dog begging for mercy in exchange for a moment of peace?" Zhuowen's words were slightly emotional. After hearing these words, many of the human juniors in the surroundings trembled. They clenched their fists so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. Their blood surged, and they also felt that it was a humiliation to sign such an unequal agreement. These juniors all wanted to speak up and support Zhuowen, but they were all stopped by the seniors in the group. The 4 Tao Masters' expressions weren't very good. Long Wen's words had gone too far. They were directly slapping their faces. Speaking of which, the 4 of them didn't want to continue fighting and wanted to negotiate peace with the non-human kind. Now Long Wen had called them cowards and dogs begging for mercy. Wasn't he indirectly saying that they were dogs? Long Wen, aren't you going too far with your words? Too radical? We're also doing this for the benefit of the human race. If we continue fighting, it will only harm the human race. Do you want the entire human race to be annihilated before you think it's right?" The Northern Tao Master Yao Jianyuan snorted coldly as he glanced coldly at Zhuowen. His tone became unfriendly. "Long Wen, you've never considered the position of the human race. You only know how to act impulsively. You're a human, and we do intend to protect you. But you're too arrogant. You actually kidnapped the holy maiden of the Phoenix people. You're in the wrong first, and we won't cover up your mistakes. You have to bear this responsibility yourself." The Western Tao Master LV Yelyang's voice was very calm, and he seemed very calm. Zhuowen sneered coldly. "So you think that selling me out is my own doing? That I'm in the wrong first? What else?" The Northern Tao Master Yao Jianyuan couldn't be bothered with Zhuowen. After saying that, he didn't say anything else. He felt that Long Wen really didn't know how to conduct himself. He had thought that Long Wen was a genius, but now it seemed that Long Wen was really brainless. Although the 4 Tao Masters had indeed agreed to cooperate, they wouldn't just stand by and do nothing. However, Long Wen had pointed the spearhead at the 4 Tao Masters as soon as he opened his mouth. Wasn't this directly offending the 4 Tao Masters? Quite a number of human cultivators in the surroundings secretly shook their heads. They felt that Long Wen was simply too impulsive. He actually did not know how to say anything nice and offended both sides. This time, he would probably be in for a great calamity. This kid is really arrogant to the point of no bounds. He's courting death. Senki Yin stood in front of the 10 Extremes Yin Corp's sex group and sneered as he looked at Zhuowen's figure. Ever since his soul was injured by the Yama demon portrait, and he fled in panic, Senki Yin had returned to the Starry Sky Tower's camp. His soul was severely injured. After returning to the Starry Sky Tower's camp, he took many divine pills to recover his soul. However, his soul recovered very slowly. Due to the injury to his soul, Senki Yin's thinking speed had become very slow and sluggish. This made Senki Yin hate Zhuowen even more. Chapter 3071. Tragic Second Elder. However, Senki Yin was unwilling to give up. Zhuowen still had the Yama's ghost portrait that he wanted very much. If Zhuowen was taken away by the alien race, then he would have no chance with the Yama's ghost portrait. However, Sun Qin didn't dare to step forward to stop them. If he did, any transcending heaven lord from the other races would be able to kill him. After all, his divine soul had been seriously injured, and his strength was almost no longer comparable to an early-stage transcending heaven lord. The yang-tongued combination silently watched the conversation between Zhuowen and the four Pathmasters. After the Northern Pathmaster ignored Zhuowen, the yang-tongued combination finally spoke. "You finished arguing. Longwen, you can now release the Saintess of the Phoenix people and come with us. Don't worry, we don't plan to take your life. We just have something to discuss with you. As long as you cooperate, your life won't be in danger." The yang-tongued combination's voice was very gentle, as if he was chatting with a friend. However, Zhuowen knew how terrifying the yang-tongued combination was. As long as he wanted to, he could immediately injure or kill Zhuowen. Even though Zhuowen's Pangu's sacred body had reached the late-stage 6-star realm, he was still far from being a match for the yang-tongued combination. Zhuowen gently rubbed the starry sky token on his waist. He couldn't help but think of the voice on the 9th floor of the Starry Sky Pagoda. This was the only trump card he could use now. He hoped that the Starry Sky Pagoda spirit wasn't tricking him. Seeing that Zhuowen didn't speak for a long time, the yang-tongued combination stopped and said with a displeased expression, "Longwen, did you hear what I said? Come over here now. No one can help you now. If you want to live, you have to do as I say." Mu Yu's beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen. She didn't hide the killing intent in her eyes. If Zhuowen didn't agree to the yang-tongued combination, she would immediately attack. Everyone was looking at Zhuowen right now. They were anticipating how this human would reply to the sheep-tongue combination. Zhuowen slowly raised his head. His gaze was as cold as a frozen lake that had not changed for thousands of years. He said indifferently, "I refuse." The surroundings were very quiet, and what replaced it was the sound of people sucking in cold air. This Longwen really had guts. He actually dared to directly refuse in front of the Yang-tongued Union and Mu Yu. Did he really want to die? The Yang-Jiao duo was stunned. Soon after, he revealed a ferocious expression and said, "You refuse? Do you really want to die? Brother Yangzi, why are you wasting your breath on this human? I'll just capture him straight away. In any case, we've already reached an agreement with the humans." All of a sudden, a figure shot out from the group of outsiders, bringing with it scorching heat. It was like a terrifying and powerful fire tornado. "It's the second elder of the Phoenix people." The humans immediately recognized the figure with the terrifying flame aura. Someone exclaimed in surprise. The Yang-tongued Union and Mu Yu looked at each other and withdrew their original intention to attack. They knew that with Elder Hong's strength, dealing with Longwen wouldn't be a problem. Zhuowen took a deep breath and looked at the second elder who was rushing over. He could clearly see the ferocious look in the second elder's eyes. He knew that this old man would definitely not hold back this time and would definitely kill him in one fell swoop. The nerves of the surrounding people tensed up. They all knew that although this second elder of the Phoenix people was also at the early stage of the heaven-reaching Master Realm, his cultivation base was extremely terrifying. However, they knew that the battle prowess of these two elders was extremely terrifying. They were definitely not ordinary people. Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and In Shaojin, the three early-stage heaven-reaching Master Realm experts of the human race, had joined forces to deal with the second elder in the Door of Darkness. However, the result of them being suppressed had long been spread throughout the space camp. "This Longwen is done for," and Shaojin muttered to himself, his face turning purple when he saw that it was the second elder who attacked. He recalled some unpleasant memories. Just when everyone thought that Longwen would repeatedly retreat in fear, they were stupefied to discover that Longwen took out a sign and loudly shouted, "I need you." That expression, that voice, and that action, it was as silly as it could get. But soon, everyone's expression changed. Even the expression of the second elder, who was surging with killing intent, changed. A destructive energy that made all living beings tremble began to slowly spread out from the Starry Sky Tower. In the center of the space camp, a black thing that looked like the mouth of a cannon slowly emerged from the middle of the Starry Sky Tower that had stood there for countless years. Boom! A beam of light suddenly shot out from the mouth of the cannon. The direction of the beam of light was actually the second elder of the Phoenix people, who was rushing towards Zhuowen. The second elder was stunned, but the moment the beam of light was about to land on him, he came back to his senses and began to retreat. At the same time, he used all the energy in his body to set up a powerful defense around him. Unfortunately, the second elder of the Phoenix people's efforts were of no use. The beam of light directly penetrated all of his defenses, converged into a single point, and finally pierced through the second elder's forehead. The second elder didn't even have time to groan before his head exploded, and his divine soul was destroyed. He became a headless corpse that fell from the sky. Zhuowen was stunned at first, but he quickly reached out with his right hand and swept the spirit ring from the second elder's hand. His Ho-E divine arrow was inside, so he naturally wouldn't let it go. Damn, this is the power of the Starry Sky Tower? Isn't this a little too awesome? After putting away the spirit ring, Zhuowen was in disbelief. The second elder of the Phoenix people was so terrifying, but he was actually killed with a single blow. No wonder the tower spirit said that the power of the Starry Sky Tower was enough to destroy a quarter of the Xianmi heavenly domain. That tower spirit said that I can only use the power of the Starry Sky Tower once. Was that one shot already enough? Zhuowen suddenly recalled what the tower spirit said to him and was shocked. Killing the second elder of the Phoenix people was indeed a pleasant surprise, but the second elder of the Phoenix people was only one of the many foreign race experts. There were many foreign race leaders in the Starry Sky camp who were even stronger than the second elder. If he could only fire one shot, then he, Zhuowen, still wouldn't be able to escape. I said that you can only use the power of the Starry Sky Tower once. Not just once. This time, you can use the Starry Sky token in your hand to control the turrets in the Starry Sky Tower. You only have 1 hour, so make good use of this opportunity. That's right, you don't need to shout, I need you anymore. You only need to communicate with the Starry Sky token. The Starry Sky Tower has a total of 9 floors, and each floor has a turret. You can control and use all 9 turrets. The tower spirit's elegant voice rang out once again, echoing in Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen's face lit up with joy. If he had 1 hour, he could use the turrets in the Starry Sky Tower to expel these foreign invaders. Thinking of this, Zhuowen suddenly jumped back and instantly reached the top of the Starry Sky Tower. Chapter 3072. Fort the Starry Sky Tower's Fort. Longwen can actually control the Starry Sky Tower's fort. How is that possible? The Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua, shouted excitedly. The other 3 Tao Lords also came back to their senses, and their eyes were filled with shock. Everyone knew that the Starry Sky Tower's energy was terrifyingly powerful, but no one could control the Starry Sky Tower's energy. Even the 4 Tao Lords could only unlock the Starry Sky Tower seal and release all the energy within the Starry Sky Tower to cause an indiscriminate explosion to destroy the foreign races. However, it was impossible to completely control the Starry Sky Tower's energy. At the very least, the 4 Tao Lords couldn't do it. They weren't even qualified to use the Starry Sky Tower's fort. But now Longwen had actually mobilized the cannons and was even able to use them to attack. Was the world going to change? Since when did the Starry Sky Tower become so obedient? Zhuowen stood at the top of the Starry Sky Tower, and his gaze fell on the eastern and northern camps. Both camps were filled with the foreign race's army. Zhuowen licked his lips, and with a thought, the bottom 3 levels of fort were aimed at the eastern camp, the middle 3 levels of fort were aimed at the northern camp, and the top 3 levels of fort were controlled by Zhuowen. They were aimed at the leaders of the foreign races who were not far away from the Starry Sky Tower. Oh no, this guy is going to attack the foreign race's army. The pupils of the Yangjian he shrank. Before he could finish speaking, 6 rays of light shot out from the 6 forts aimed at the eastern and northern camps. They tore through the void and shot into the 2 camps. The rays of light were too terrifying, and they could pierce through anything. Anything that was hit by the rays of light was basically annihilated into nothingness. The rays of light were like the rays of death. Everywhere they passed, everything was turned into ruins and death. The foreign races in the 2 camps screamed incessantly. None of them were lucky enough to survive after being hit by the rays of light. They were basically annihilated into dust. Run, run. Amidst the endless screams, the foreign race's army panicked, and they started to flee towards the starry sky outside. They knew that if they continued to stay here, they would definitely die. There was still a chance of survival if they escaped. The Yangjian ensemble's face instantly turned gloomy. He stared at the figure at the top of the Universal Tower. He knew that he had to stop this person. Otherwise, their foreign race army would be doomed. Thinking of this, the Yangtang combination stomped its right leg and charged toward Zhuowen as if it had teleported. He was confident that he wasn't too far away from the Universal Tower. With his speed, he would be able to reach the top of the Universal Tower in the blink of an eye. Then he would be able to capture this human. But soon, a strong sense of crisis rose in his mind. Immediately, the 3 turrets on the upper 3 floors of the Starry Sky Tower aimed in the direction of the Yangshi combined staff and shot out 3 terrifying beams of light. The expression of the Yangshi combination changed drastically. Both of his feet stomped in the air and instantly changed several tens of positions in the air, leaving behind many illusory shadows. However, the beam of light seemed to have seen through the Yangshi duo's escape route. It actually chased after the Yangshi duo. The Yangshi duo had no choice but to continuously retreat. In the end, he retreated to his original position. At the same time, 1/3 of the Yangshi duo's abdomen had disappeared. Obviously, when the Yangshi duo was dodging, he must have been hit by one of the beams of light. That was why 1/3 of the flesh on his abdomen had disappeared into nothingness. The Yangshi duo's face turned ugly. He realized that his energy could not circulate on its own in the area that was hit by the beam of light. Furthermore, the wound could not heal on its own. In other words, the recovery was very slow. The Yangshi duo found it unbelievable. He was from the witch race and had a strong physical body. Among the countless races in the primitive heaven realm, he could be considered one of the best. Usually, such an injury could be healed in the blink of an eye, but now the wound could not heal. He knew that it was because of the beam of light from the Universal Tower. The energy of the beam of light was not ordinary. It could actually suppress the powerful recovery of his physical body. What? Didn't you want to capture me just now? Why aren't you coming now? Zhuowen stood on the top of the Starry Sky Tower, looking down at countless human beings and non-humankind beings in the 4 Starry Sky campsites. He stared at the Yangtang Union, and his voice was neither fast nor slow, but it was so soul-stirring, like a drum beating in everyone's hearts. The Yangshi duo clutched the wound on his abdomen. His eyes were filled with shock and uncertainty. He never thought that the situation would turn around. This damned Long when actually knew how to use the energy of the Universal Tower. How did he do it? Since you're not coming, I'll do it. Zhuowen grinned. His smile was so cold that it did not contain any warmth. After Zhuowen finished speaking, 3 beams of light shot out from the 3 levels of the Universal Tower towards the Yangshi duo side. There were a total of 4 foreign race leaders and a group of foreign race elites on the Yangshi duo side. When Zhuowen controlled the Universal Tower to attack them, these foreign race leaders immediately retreated. They ran much faster than the Yangshi duo and did not have any awareness of facing the attack head-on. Mu Yu was also retreating. Her eyes were filled with anger and fear. The 2 leaders of the Phoenix people were actually killed just like that. This was a great loss to the Phoenix people. In addition, even the hope of the Phoenix people, the saintess of the Phoenix people, was in the hands of this damned Longwen. Now, facing Longwen, she could only keep retreating. This made Muyu so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood. No matter how gloomy she felt, she really didn't dare to rush up. The Universal Star Tower's cannons were too terrifying. She could smell the threat of death from the cannons. If she rushed up, it would be the same as courting death. Brother Yangshi, what should we do now? Twilight Rain sent a voice transmission to the Sheep and Tongue Harmony, who was also dodging the attacks. As she dodged the attacks, the Yangshi duo's face was gloomy. His eyes were filled with unwillingness as he said, "Retreat!" Mu Yu was startled, but when she saw the non-humankind army in the east and north camps running away, her face was filled with defeat. The Yangshi duo's suggestion was indeed the wisest one. If they did not retreat now, the foreign race would suffer even greater losses. Let's retreat. Mu Yu nodded and started to retreat. Regardless of whether it was the Yangjiao Harmonious Union, Mu Yu, or the other two foreign race leaders, they were all transcending heaven masters. With the four of them working together, they were indeed able to block the attacks of the three rays of light and began to retreat in an orderly manner. Four Tao Masters. How long are you planning to watch this show? Chapter 3073. Fleeing in panic, Longwen. Is this how you speak to a Tao Lord? The Northern Tao Lord, Yao Jianyuan, said coldly. However, the Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua, took a step forward and rushed toward the Yang-tongued combination. At the same time, he transmitted his voice to Zhuowen. Longwen, thank you for this. Also, we four Tao Lords were in the wrong previously. After this is over, I will do my best to compensate you. After speaking, Tan Xinghua rushed toward the Yang-tongued combination and took out the meteor whip. The meteor whip surface was covered in lightning, and it was like an ancient lightning snake. Endless lightning whistled as it rushed toward the Yang-tongued combination. Tan Xinghua, you are courting death. You were severely injured by me previously, and you still dare to fight me with your severely injured body. You are courting death. Seeing Tan Xinghua's meteor long whip, killing intent burst out from the Yang-tongued Union's eyes. He clenched his right hand into the air, and a huge axe appeared in his palm. He fiercely knocked the meteor long whip to one side. The Yang-tongued combination stepped forward with his right foot, and the huge axe in his hand followed his momentum and slammed toward Tan Xinghua. The powerful force seemed to have broken the rules of the heavenly Tao. The entire space was as fragile as paper in front of the huge axe's powerful force. Tan Xinghua's expression changed drastically. He was already severely injured, and even at his peak, he might not be able to defeat the Yang-tongued combination, let alone now. Tan Xinghua could only swing his right arm fiercely when he saw the gigantic axe coming towards him. The meteor whip in his palm was like a tornado. It was placed horizontally in front of him and began to spin unceasingly. The speed was extremely fast, and the lightning surged and exploded. Bang! Unfortunately, the meteor whip only managed to block for a few breaths of time before it was pushed to the side. Tan Xinghua spat out a mouthful of blood and exposed a flaw in his chest. Die! The Yang-tongued combination's face was ferocious. The huge axe in his hand cut through the air like water and slammed toward the flaw in Tan Xinghua's chest. The Yang-tongued combination's attack was too terrifying. If it hit Tan Xinghua, he would definitely die. Whoosh! A ray of light suddenly swept over and blasted on top of the gigantic axe. The terrifying force caused the Yangjiao to tremble and involuntarily retreat. The giant axe was also sent flying by the ray of light. It landed far away and floated in the air, its surface dim. Whoosh! Whoosh! Another 2 rays of light shot over, one from the front and one from the back, sandwiching the harmonious sheep and tongue in the middle. A look of panic appeared on his face as he stomped his feet repeatedly in the air. His entire body turned into a series of afterimages as he escaped from the encirclement of the 2 rays of light. However, the moment he escaped, a third beam of light suddenly pierced through. This beam of light was very familiar to him. It was the same beam of light that had sent his giant axe flying. The ray of light had suddenly appeared at this moment and landed on the path that he was about to leave. At this moment, there was simply no way to dodge the combination of the goat and the tongue. He activated all the energy in his body and circulated it around his body, using this to resist the ray of light. Bang! The ray of light landed on the body of the sheep and tongue, and an extremely ear-piercing, muffled sound erupted. The Yangjiao crossed his hands in front of him, and all the energy in his body condensed on his hands, forming a powerful defense. However, at this moment, violent ripples appeared on the energy defense, as if countless stones had fallen on the surface of water. The ripples were very dense and very violent. The Yangjiao's face was pale and bloodless. His body trembled even more violently, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He began to retreat continuously. The pressure that the ray of light gave him was too great, and he could not hold on any longer. At the top of the starry sky tower, Zhuowen immediately saw the Yangjiao, who was still struggling to hold on. With a thought, the other 2 turrets on the upper level suddenly gathered together and aimed at the Yangjiao. 2 dazzling rays of light burst out at the same time, and the target was the Yangjiao, who was still struggling to hold on. Damn! The Yangjiao naturally saw the 2 rays of light that swept over again. His pupils shrank to the size of needles, and he could not help but curse. He had already resisted one of the turret's rays of light to the brink of death, and now there were 2 equally terrifying rays of light blasting over. This was simply asking him to die. The Yangjiao subconsciously wanted to escape, but he could not. The ray of light in front of him was firmly suppressing him, making him unable to move at all. In the end, the 2 rays of light approached and landed in front of the Yangjiao. The surface of the Yangjiao's defense rippled even more violently. In the end, the ripples disappeared and the defense shattered. The 3 terrifying rays of light pressed forward and directly passed through the Yangjiao's chest. The terrifying energy exploded in front of the Yangjiao, and the Yangjiao did not even have the chance to make a sound before it was blasted into smithereens. The moment the turrets killed the Yangjiao, Zhuowen frowned slightly. He felt that something was wrong. At the place where the Yangjiao died, a ray of blood-red light suddenly burst out. The blood-red light fled toward the void outside the starry sky tower at an extremely fast speed. Zhuowen immediately sensed the escaping blood-red light and immediately controlled one of the turrets to aim at the blood-red light, firing a terrifying ray of light. Buzz, buzz, buzz! However, the blood-red light was very agile and was extremely fast. Before the ray of light hit it, it had already dodged and continued to flee into the depths of the void. Soon, it disappeared without a trace. As expected of the war god of the sorcerer tribe, he actually has such a trump card to escape. Zhuowen's face was slightly gloomy. He no longer cared about the Yangjiao, as he knew that he no longer had the ability to stop the Yangjiao. Mu Yu and the other foreign race leaders were still retreating. After the Yangjiao was forced to flee, they retreated even faster. Some of them even turned around and fled for their lives. Unfortunately, Zhuowen did not intend to let these foreign race leaders off so easily. Zhuowen controlled the 9 turrets of the Starry Sky Tower. The foreign race army in the east and the north of the Starry Sky camp had basically been annihilated by the turrets. Most of the foreign race troops were left in the 2 camps. As for the foreign race troops who were still alive, there were not many of them left. Moreover, Zhuowen also knew that if he wanted to hurt the foreign race, he would have to kill a few of their leaders. As the saying went, to catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. When the 9 turrets of the Starry Sky Tower finally aimed at Mu Yu and the other foreign race leaders, their bodies immediately stiffened and their eyes were filled with fear. But soon, these foreign race leaders did not care about anything else. They took out their flying divine weapons and quickly fled. 3 turrets had almost annihilated the Yangjiao. Now that 9 turrets were firing at the same time, they were on the verge of being wiped out. If they did not leave now, when would they leave? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 9 turrets fired 9 rays of light at the same time. These 9 rays of light were like dragons of death. They shot out in a roundabout way and instantly hit several foreign race elites. Chapter 3074. Starry Sky Pagoda Master Muyu and the other 2 mid-stage sky piercing realm foreign race leaders did not even turn their heads as they fled. Now was not the time to care about these foreign race elites. If they were a step late, they would follow in the footsteps of the sheep-tongue combination technique. Furthermore, they did not have a powerful escape technique like the sheep-tongue combination technique. The final outcome was likely to be death. Rays of light shot out one after another, and the foreign race elites fell one after another. Mu Yu and the other 2 foreign race leaders only cared about fleeing in front. The fear in their hearts grew stronger and stronger. When all the non-humankind elites behind the 3 of them died, the sense of crisis in their hearts reached the most intense moment. Then they felt that the 9 beams of light were chasing after them, following behind them like poisonous snakes hiding in the dark, ready to hunt. At this moment, they felt that the interstellar camp was so long, as if there was no end to it. It was as if they could not leave this place at all. Ah! Suddenly, a miserable cry rang out behind Muyu. At the very back was the Black Tiger race leader. At this moment, he was shot by the cannon, and his entire body was covered in white light. Bang! 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 The other 8 rays of light followed closely behind and merged into the Black Tiger race leader's body. The Black Tiger race leader only had time to let out a miserable cry before he was blasted into pieces by the rays of light. He could not be more dead. In front of the Black Tiger race leader was the Dragon race leader. When the Dragon race leader saw the Black Tiger race leader die just like that, he was scared out of his wits. He did not hesitate to burn his blood essence to escape. Mu Yu had already burned her blood essence. Behind her, a pair of incomparably huge blood-red wings spread open. With a light flap, Mu Yu disappeared from the spot like a gust of wind. Another 9 rays of light shot out. These rays of light were too fast, almost reaching the speed of light. Even though the Dragon race leader burned his blood essence and revealed his true body, he was still unable to dodge the 9 rays of light. The 9 rays of light pierced through him, and with a roar, his huge dragon body exploded, turning into a mist of blood. Mu Yu burned her blood essence crazily. Her speed rose to the extreme, and she instantly rushed out of the interstellar camp. However, she did not dare to stay for too long. She continued to crazily burn her essence blood. After a few flashes, her figure completely disappeared. Zhuowen stood at the top of the tower and watched Sunset Rain's figure disappear. Although he felt that it was a pity, he also felt relieved. An hour passed by very quickly, and it was almost time for him to finish his bombardment. If the Yangjiao Union, Mu Yu, and the others could hold on for a little longer, he might not be able to use the cannons of the Starry Sky Tower anymore. If they found out that something was amiss, he would be in deep trouble. Looking at the cannons on the surface of the Starry Sky Tower automatically retracting back into the tower, Zhuowen's eyes remained calm as he slowly jumped down from the top of the tower. At this moment, all the human cultivators in the Starry Sky Tower stared blankly at this scene. This fellow was a little too surprising, wasn't he? He had thought that once the draconic runes were discovered, he would be dead for sure. However, the outcome seemed to be a joke to everyone. Longwen had suddenly grasped the power of the Starry Sky Tower and mobilized the turrets in the tower. Then, with the help of the turrets, he had defeated a group of aggressive draconic runes that had come right in front of the human race. Even the Yangjiao Union, the war god of the sorcerer tribe, had been beaten to a pulp by the turrets and had almost died. The 4 Dao Lords were all dumbfounded. The draconic runes that had troubled the human race to the extreme had been dealt with by this person just like that. This had completely overturned their understanding of the world, and they felt that this world was too crazy. Senior Long, thank you for helping me reclaim the lost land. Please accept a bow from Tan Xinghua. Under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, the Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua, came before Zhuowen and bowed very seriously with a respectful look in his eyes. Heavens, this world was too crazy. Tan Xinghua was one of the 4 Tao Lords of the astral battlefield and a mid-stage Tao Lord. Now he was bowing down to an eternal overlord, cultivator, and calling him senior. What kind of scene was this? However, no one present felt that this was out of place. Although the cultivation of this cultivator named Longwen was very low and even insignificant, this guy was able to use the energy of the astral tower. This was something that not even the 4 Tao Lords were qualified to do. Moreover, this person had relied on the astral tower's energy to completely defeat the draconic runes and kill 2 draconic leaders. This was a feat that not even the 4 Tao Lords had accomplished. The other 3 Tao Lords also came back to their senses and hurriedly walked before Zhuowen and bowed respectfully. Although they felt that it was unreal, Longwen had indeed helped the human race defeat the draconic runes. It could be said that Longwen was a great contributor to the human race. The Northern Tao Lord followed the other Tao Lords and bowed to Zhuowen, but his gaze was very complicated. Not long ago, he had not taken Zhuowen seriously at all. Now the roles had been reversed, and he had to bow to this person as a junior. It had to be said that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. Zhuowen couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the 4 Tao Lords. He knew that they were respectful to him mainly because he could use the astral tower's energy. If the 4 Tao Lords knew that he could only use the astral tower's energy once, they probably wouldn't be so respectful to him. They might even not care about him at all. Any kind of respect was based on one's strength and status. Zhuowen's cultivation wasn't high, but he could control the astral tower's energy and indirectly displayed his strength. Therefore, he won the respect of the 4 Tao Lords and the other humans. However, Zhuowen knew that this kind of respect wouldn't last long. After all, the astral tower was just an external force that could only be used once. Senior Long, since you can control the astral tower's energy, then you should be the tower master. If Senior Long doesn't mind, the 4 of us are willing to acknowledge you as the tower master. We're willing to obey all your orders. Tan Xinghua was very proactive. He stood in front of Zhuowen and bowed deeply to Zhuowen. As for the other 3 Tao Lords, besides Yao Jianyuan, who was frowning, the other 2 revealed expressions of agreement. Yes, Brother Tan is right. Senior Long, since you can control the astral tower's energy, you're more qualified than the 4 of us to command the astral battlefield. If you become the tower master, we're willing to obey your orders. Mei Zian, the Southern Tao Lord, interrupted. L.V. Yelyang, the Western Tao Lord, nodded repeatedly. However, Yao Jianyuan, the Northern Tao Lord, didn't feel very comfortable. However, when he saw that the other 3 Tao Lords seemed to agree, he could only nod against his will. Chapter 3075. Refusal. The Starry Sky Pagoda Master seemed to be very impressive on the surface, but Zhuowen knew that he was just a target for the limelight during this important period. If the foreign race army attacked again, then he would have to take the lead and charge at the front for the 4 Tao Masters and the rest of the human race. If he wasn't strong enough, then he would be the first cannon fodder to be destroyed. If he could still use the Starry Sky Pagoda's energy, then this would naturally be a small matter. However, the problem was that he no longer had the qualifications to use the Starry Sky Pagoda's energy. If there wasn't something wrong with his brain, then he wouldn't have become the Starry Sky Pagoda Master. This was definitely looking for trouble. Moreover, he had other things to do. How could he have the time to waste on the Starry Sky Pagoda? It was even more impossible for him to foolishly stay in the Starry Sky Pagoda as some bullshit pagoda master. Tan Xinghua looked at Zhuowen cautiously, afraid that Zhuowen would refuse. As Tan Xinghua expected, Zhuowen really did refuse. Moreover, it was a stern refusal. Senior Long, why is that? You can control the Starry Sky Pagoda's energy, so you are the hope of the human race. With you around, the foreign race army will be beaten to a pulp no matter how big they are. You will become the true savior of the human race. Tan Xinghua hurriedly said. Zhuowen rolled his eyes and said helplessly, I have very important things to do. I really don't have the time to be the pagoda master. With that, Zhuowen walked straight towards the Sun Chasing Temple's team. The representative of the Sun Chasing Temple's team was called Kong Xingyu. He was an elder of the Sun Chasing Temple and an early-stage creator realm expert. He was the one who had stopped the impulsive Jiang Qixing and prevented him from throwing his life away. However, Kong Xingyu really wanted to slap himself now. If he had known that Zhuowen actually knew how to use the Starry Sky Pagoda's energy, he wouldn't have stopped Jiang Qixing from standing up for Longwen. Now that he saw Longwen walking towards him, Kong Xingyu wasn't happy. Instead, he was afraid. He was afraid that Longwen would blame him for stopping Jiang Qixing. Of course, Kong Xingyu was overthinking things. Zhuowen walked to the front of the group and greeted Jiang Qixing warmly. Then, Zhuowen's eyes fell on Kong Xingyu. Kong Xingyu reluctantly smiled, but his smile was very unnatural. He had to bite the bullet and said, Senior Long, may I know why you have come to our team? Zhuowen was a little speechless. Now, everyone was addressing him as Senior Long. On the surface, his cultivation base was only that of an eternal overlord. This made him feel strange. Hee, Brother Jiang and I are good friends. Today, I mainly want to go to your Zhui Ri temple for a stroll. Also, I heard that your sun-chasing temple has a Danxia Qingyang Red, right? I wonder if I can take a look around? Zhuowen asked with a smile. Kong Xingyu saw that Zhuowen didn't come here to find trouble, so he let out a sigh of relief in his heart. Then he enthusiastically patted his chest and said, If Senior Long wants to come to our sun-chasing temple, then we will welcome you. As for the Danxia Qingyang Red, our sun-chasing temple does have it, but at this point, Kong Xingyu also realized that Longwen's purpose of going to their sun-chasing temple should be the Danxia Qingyang Red. But what? Zhuowen asked. It's just that the Danxia Qingyang Red has already withered. I'm afraid it's about to die. Senior Long, if you go to visit it, you will only see a withered Danxia Qingyang Red. Kong Xingyu shook his head and said helplessly, It's okay. I just want to go to your sun-chasing temple to see the Danxia Qingyang Red. Even if it's withered, I still want to see it. Why? Am I not welcome? Zhuowen smiled faintly, not minding it. Kong Xingyu repeatedly said, Senior Long, we are honored by your presence. I can't be more excited. May I know when Senior Long plans to come to our sect? After I get rid of one person, I will immediately go to the sun-chasing temple with you. Zhuowen smiled slightly. When Kong Xingyu was about to ask Zhuowen who he was going to get rid of, Zhuowen had already jumped high into the sky. His eyes were cold as he shouted in a deep voice, Senki Yin, get out here! Zhuowen's voice resounded throughout the starry sky tower like thunder. For a moment, everyone was stunned. Of course, they knew Senki Yin. He was the sect leader of the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect, an expert at the initial stage of the sky-reaching master. Longwen asked Senki Yin to get out the moment he opened his mouth. Was there any conflict between the two? Senki Yin, who was standing in the team of the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect, looked gloomy but did not do anything. When everyone's gazes landed on him, he clenched his fist so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. Soon after, he coldly snorted and said, Longwen, are you done yet? If you continue to challenge me, don't blame me for revealing your secret. Zhuowen sneered. He knew what Senki Yin's secret was. It was about his real name and the Yama demon portrait. However, Zhuowen was not afraid. Now that everyone knew that he could use the Starry Sky Tower's energy, No one would dare to make a move against him within the Starry Sky Tower. Even the 4 Tao Masters would not dare to do anything to him. Zhuowen took out the Ho-E Divine Bow and Ho-E Divine Arrow again and pulled the bowstring to a full moon. A terrifying killing intent instantly spread throughout the Starry Sky Tower. Senki Yin's pupils shrank. He started to retreat faster and faster. Although the Ho-E Divine Arrow was terrifying, it was not enough to kill him. His main fear was still the Starry Sky Tower. Zhuowen was too strange. He could actually use the Starry Sky Tower's energy. If the cannon from before had fired at him, he would have died without a doubt. When he thought of this, Senki Yin's entire body trembled in fear. He rapidly retreated faster and faster. In the end, he directly fled towards a passage leading to the Xianmi heavenly region. Unfortunately, before Senki Yin could escape to the entrance, he was blocked by a terrifying gust of wind. Then, Senki Yin saw a huge fist whizzing towards him. It grew bigger and bigger in his eyes. Eventually, it smashed into his face. Puchi! Senki Yin spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body flew backwards and landed heavily on the ground. He looked at the figure blocking the entrance in disbelief. This figure was none other than the Eastern Tao Master, Tan Xinghua. Zhuowen was not surprised that Tan Xinghua would make a move. Tan Xinghua seemed to be a person who knew how to repay kindness. Previously, Tan Xinghua used the Starry Sky Tower to save his life. Zhuowen owed Zhuowen a favor. Now that Zhuowen and Senki Yin had a feud, Tan Xinghua could use this opportunity to block Senki Yin and repay the favor he owed Zhuowen. Whoosh! The Ho-E Divine Arrow left the bowstring and flew toward Senki Yin. It carried a monstrous killing intent and an unyielding will. Senki Yin's face was gloomy. He no longer tried to escape. Instead, he began to mobilize all the energy in his body, intending to block this divine arrow. Bang! 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 The divine arrow directly pierced through Sun Qin's many defenses and pierced through his chest, bringing with it a mournful stream of blood that splashed out in all directions. Zhuowen waved his hand and retrieved the Ho-E Divine Arrow. Once again, he knocked the divine arrow on the divine bow and pulled it to a full moon. Senki Yin kept coughing out blood. He stood up and stared at the divine arrow that was pulled to a full moon by Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with fear. Chapter 3076. Return Swish. The Ho-E God's arrow left the bowstring and shot towards Senki Yin with monstrous killing intent and an unyielding will. Senki Yin's face sank. He no longer attempted to flee. Instead, he began to circulate all the energy in his body in an attempt to block the incoming arrow. Bang! 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 The divine arrow directly pierced through Sun Qin's many defenses and pierced through his chest, bringing with it a mournful stream of blood that splashed out in all directions. Zhuowen waved his hand and retrieved Ho-Yi's divine arrow. Once again, he knocked the divine arrow on the divine bow and pulled the string to a full moon. Senki Yin constantly coughed up blood. He stood up and stared fixedly at the arrow that Zhuowen had drawn to a full moon. His eyes were filled with fear. His soul had still not recovered from the attack of the Yama demon portrait. Otherwise, he would not have been injured so easily by the Ho-E God's arrow. Another divine arrow soared through the sky, bringing with it an unbelievably terrifying killing intent. Senki Yin was already heavily injured. The arrow was extremely fast, so he was only able to avoid being hit in the vitals. The arrow pierced through his shoulder blade and nailed him to the ground. The terrifying killing intent from the arrow swept into Senki Yin's body like a storm, causing Senki Yin to vomit blood again. He was as pale as a patient on the verge of death. Senki Yin roared out. The arrow that had nailed him to the shoulder blade was immediately knocked away. Senki Yin was basically covered in blood. His eyes were bloodshot, making him look extremely terrifying. With a wave of his hand, Zhuowen grabbed the Ho-E God's arrow once more. He knocked it on the bowstring and drew it again. Senki Yin hurriedly retreated. His eyes were filled with fear when he saw that Zhuowen was actually planning to shoot a third arrow. 1 or 2 shots of Ho Yi's divine arrows wouldn't be able to kill him, but 5, 6, or even more times he really wouldn't be able to withstand them and would be killed by them in the end. Zhuowen, you killed a disciple of my Yin Corp sect and stole the Yama's demon portrait that I worked so hard to obtain. You even obtained the inheritance of the ancestral shaman, Gonggong. You've already gotten everything you wanted, and now you still want to silence me. Senki Yin roared loudly. Soon after, a bloody mist erupted from his body, making him look extremely ferocious and terrifying. Whoosh! Zhuowen shot out another Ho Yi mystical arrow. This mystical arrow carried an even sharper killing intent as it shot into the blood mist. As the blood mist dissipated, Zhuowen found that Senki Yin was gone. The divine arrow was stuck in the hard ground. It's the blood shadow evasion technique. This is Senki Yin's strongest escape technique. He sacrificed his body and teleported back to the blood pool that was set up beforehand. However, the side effects are huge. After using this technique, Senki Yin's cultivation will drop drastically. I'm afraid he will no longer be the master of Skirich. Tan Xinghua flew to a place not far from Zhuowen. Looking at the blood mist left by Senki Yin, he explained softly. Zhuowen put away the Ho Yi mystical arrow and landed on the ground. He cupped his hands and thanked Tan Xinghua. Thank you for your help just now, Master Tan. Tan Xinghua hurriedly returned the gesture. The person in front of him was a ruthless person who could use the energy of the Starry Sky Pagoda. Although his cultivation and strength were far inferior to his, as long as this guy used the Starry Sky Pagoda's cannons, he could easily get rid of him. Not to mention that Zhuowen had saved his life, and he still owed Zhuowen a favor. This favor had to be returned. Senior Long, do you really not want to become the Starry Sky Pagoda Master? As long as you are willing to accept, I, Tan Xinghua, will be the first to support you. Tan Xinghua patted his chest and said. Zhuowen waved his hand and politely refused Tan Xinghua's good intentions. He walked straight to the sun-chasing temple team and said to Jiang Qixing and Kong Xingyu, "Let's go now!" Kong Xingyu and Jiang Qixing naturally didn't object. Zhuowen was Jiang Qixing's friend. Moreover, it was Jiang Qixing who mentioned the red sun pill to Zhuowen. As for Kong Xingyu, in his heart, Zhuowen was a powerful expert. Naturally, he was eager to have a good relationship with such an expert. He would not object to it. Before leaving the Starry Sky battlefield, Zhuowen said goodbye to Yao Xiangjuan of the Yin and Yang Divine sect team. What amused Zhuowen was that when Zhuowen said goodbye to Yao Xiangjuan, the sect master of the Yin and Yang Divine sect, and Xiaojin kept winking at Yao Xiangjuan, hinting at something. Zhuowen didn't mind. After saying goodbye to Yao Xiangjuan, he followed Kong Xingyu and the others into the eastern Starry Sky camp. They went through the tunnel and returned to the host territory. Zhuowen wasn't worried about Yao Xiangjuan. Although Yi Hanfei, the sect master of the Yin and Yang Divine sect, wasn't a good person, he had already dealt with him. The sect master of the Yin and Yang Divine sect, and Xiaojin was a good person. With Yao Xiangjuan's talent, she would definitely be valued by Xiaojin. She would definitely shine in the future. Looking at Zhuowen's disappearing back, Tan Xinghua's eyes dimmed and he sighed softly. What a pity! Senior Long is qualified to use the Starry Sky Pagoda's fort. He is most suitable to become the Pagoda Master and lead the Starry Sky battlefield. Sigh. The other 3 Dao Masters came to Tan Xinghua's side and also felt that it was a pity. However, the Northern Dao Master, Yao Jianyuan, said with some doubts, if Longwen used the Starry Sky Pagoda's fort, he could have completely eliminated Senki Yin. However, he didn't use it and let Senki Yin escape in the end. Don't you think it's suspicious? Mei Zian and LV Yelyang's eyes flickered. Both of them had the same doubts as Yao Jianyuan. Tan Xinghua said in a deep voice, Old Yao, I know that you are somewhat dissatisfied with Senior Long. However, I think it's best if you don't show it. Senior Long almost eliminated experts like the Yongjin Union and Muyu. Don't tell me that you think you are stronger than the Yongjin Union and Muyu? Also, the reason why Senior Long didn't use the fort was because he didn't want to use the Starry Sky Pagoda to deal with his own kind. This thing is only used to deal with foreign races. Moreover, the fort is too powerful. Once it is activated, it will cause large-scale destruction. At that time, your southern and western cosmic camps will be destroyed. Senior Long is taking care of us outsiders. Do you still not understand? After Tan Xinghua finished speaking, his gaze towards Long Wen became even more respectful. In his heart, Long Wen was simply a virtuous saint. Yao Jianyuan, Mei Zian, and LV Yelian heard this, and their eyes were filled with respect. Obviously, they also agreed with Tan Xinghua's explanation. If Zhuowen had been there and heard Tan Xinghua's words, he would have definitely slapped the table and praised him. Old Tan's imagination is really what I want. Not bad, not bad. He has the potential to be my lackey. In the host region, in the depths of the 10 Absolutes Een Corpse Sex secret chamber, there was a square blood pool that was dozens of square meters wide. This pool of blood was like boiling water, constantly boiling and rolling. The bright red blood jumped in midair, like a rose blooming in the air, bright and dazzling. Chapter 3077. Cut off as the blood pool continued to decrease. That thing continued to rise. The thing that rose from the bottom of the pool also became clearer. It was a middle-aged man in a blood-red robe. His eyes were closed, and his face was pale, like a vampire that had just woken up. Suddenly, the middle-aged man opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he crawled out of the blood pool. His movements were somewhat stiff, like a baby that had just learned how to walk. I'm really not used to this new body. It's so stiff. I can't move freely at all. After the middle-aged man crawled out of the blood pool, he sat on a stone chair. His eyes were filled with hatred as he said, hatefully, "Damn Zhuowen. If I don't take revenge, I, Senki-in, will change my surname to yours." He actually forced me to use the blood shadow escape technique. My realm has already fallen from the early stage of the Master of Heaven Ascension to the Master of Creation. That damned bastard. This person was Senki-in. He had been forced by Zhuowen to use the blood shadow escape technique in the Starry Sky Tower. He had paid the price of a shattered body and a drop in cultivation to be reborn in the blood pool. I must first seal the sect. Once my cultivation recovers, I'll make that Zhuowen die a horrible death. Senki Yin's sinister voice was filled with hatred. After he had mostly recovered, he stood up and walked to the door of the secret chamber. He opened the door and saw that behind it was an even larger secret chamber. There was an even larger blood pool in the secret chamber. In the center of the blood pool was a blood-red lotus platform. On the lotus platform, a figure was sitting, cross-legged, quietly like a boulder. This was a rather young man. His upper body was bare, revealing his robust and muscular body. What was even more peculiar was that there was a golden vertical eye between the young man's eyebrows. The vertical eye emitted a golden light and revealed a mysterious aura. The young man sat upright on the blood-red lotus platform. His breathing was even. Waves of blood chi intertwined in the blood pool like living blood pythons. They fought to be the first to burrow into the young man's body. As he continued to absorb the blood chi, the aura of the young man grew stronger and stronger, like a beating heart. San Qin silently stared at the young man in front of him, and his eyes flashed as he muttered to himself, "I still haven't seen through this Sakra's constitution, but his cultivation speed is so fast, and with the help of the energy from my blood pool, his cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds. He has already stepped into the third step of the Tao confirmation stage, the God of Creation stage." Senki Yin's eyes were filled with shock. He remembered that before he had left the 10 Extremities Een Corpse sect for the Starry Sky battlefield, Sakyamana's cultivation had only been at the early stage Eternal Lord realm. Now that he had returned, Sakyamuni had actually broken through. This speed was just too fast. Besides that, Senki-in sensed that Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root was extremely formidable, and it was even more terrifying than an ordinary heaven-rank ancestral Tao root. So his ability to cultivate so quickly was probably related to the top-grade ancestral Tao root within his body. Speaking of which, Senki-in was rather looking forward to Sakyamuni. No matter if it was his disposition or natural talent, Sakyamuni was much stronger than Ghost Plume. Sakyamuni's current cultivation had even surpassed Ghost Plume's. Even though he didn't know if Ghost Plume was still alive because of Zhuowen, Senki-in didn't care about Ghost Plume anymore. Instead, he intended to nurture Sakyamuni into the successor of the 10 Extremities In Corpse sect. Sakyamuni seemed to have sensed that someone had entered, and he stopped absorbing the blood chi from the blood pond and slowly opened his eyes. His pupils were dark gold in color, and they looked very fierce and cold. He stood up and saw Senki-in at the door. He strode out, flashed out of the blood pond, and arrived before Senki-in. He cupped his hands respectfully and said, "Sect Master, when did you return? Why didn't you inform me in advance?" Senki-in's expression was a little unnatural. He couldn't possibly say that he was almost beaten to death and had to use the blood shadow escape technique to escape. The matter in the star battlefield is over. I just came back and saw that you were still cultivating, so I didn't want to disturb you. All right, I won't disturb your cultivation. I'll take my leave first. Sun Qin waved his hand and said before leaving the secret chamber. Sakyamuni silently looked at Senki-in's back. His eyes slowly narrowed, and he was slightly puzzled. The moment he opened his eyes, he could see that Senki-in's aura was much weaker than before, as if he had suffered a serious injury. Sakyamuni guessed that Senki-in might have encountered some unforeseen circumstances in the star battlefield, but he didn't say much. Zhuowen followed Kong Xingyu's team. After leaving the star battlefield, he went directly to the sun-chasing temple. He planned to go to the primitive heavenly realm after finishing the Danxia Qingyang read in the sun-chasing temple. He was really worried about Mu Qinshua's safety. Although the saintess of the Phoenix people had repeatedly assured him that Mu Qinshua's life was not in danger, he knew that Mu Qinshua's life must be very difficult among the Phoenix people, as her bloodline had been taken away. As for the Danxia Qingyang read, it was one of the 6 divine medicines used to refine the 6 desires spirit-condensing pill. It was Moyan Wushang's life-saving straw, so he naturally wouldn't leave it behind. Zhuowen sat cross-legged in a quiet room and began to silently consolidate his newly advanced Pangu sacred body. His Pangu sacred body had been advancing rapidly during this period of time. After reaching the 6 stars realm, it directly advanced to the 6 stars realm. Now he had to consolidate it. Otherwise, it would leave behind hidden dangers. He was in a huge flying divine artifact. The flying divine artifact looked like a huge pavilion. At the bottom of the pavilion, there was a strong airflow spurting out, pushing the huge pavilion forward. This flying divine artifact belonged to Kong Xingyu. Basically, all the disciples of the sun-chasing temple had corresponding rooms in it. The room Zhuowen was in was the best room in the flying divine artifact, which was arranged by Kong Xingyu. Suddenly, Zhuowen felt the room shaking more and more violently. Finally, he felt that the flying divine artifact outside suddenly stopped, as if it had braked. The powerful inertia caused Zhuowen's body to fly forward. However, Zhuowen's feet stomped on the ground, and he was as still as a rock, standing straight on the spot. Soon, the door of his room opened, and Jiang Qixing came in. At this moment, Jiang Qixing's face was slightly flustered, and his eyes were solemn. "Brother Jiang, did someone intercept the flying divine artifact?" When something happened to the flying divine artifact, Zhuowen's divine senses had already probed outside. He found that there was an invisible formation ripple in front of the flying divine artifact. Obviously, someone had set up a formation in advance, with the purpose of blocking the flying divine artifact of the sun-chasing temple. Let's go. Let's go out and have a look, Zhuowen said, and walked out of the deck with Jiang Qixing. At this moment, Kong Xingyu was standing at the head of the deck with dozens of people of the sun-chasing temple, looking solemnly at the formation restriction that intercepted the flying divine artifact in front of them.